So the last week or so in the Wrath Classic stratosphere has been quite interesting, watching the shenanigans on the PTR with Ulduar. Now, we've been talking about this on the show, about some of the blue posts and the updates, about this isn't going to be your grandmama's Ulduar, something's going to be a little bit different. And so people have been absolutely gluing their eyes to Twitch and watching all the streamers tackle this, quote unquote new content, even though it's not really new content, but seeing what kind of, style of Ulduar Blizzard is actually planning on throwing at us and catering to the 2022 audience. And the results have been interesting to say the least. And I really wanted to tackle this in one big podcast, get a bunch of big, loud voices on here, a lot of personalities to really break down what they have played and also what they've seen on the Ulduar PTR and what it means for Wrath Classic gamers moving forward. So having said all that, let's introduce all these amazing people that I'm so excited to have here. A lot of returnees and one new guest that I'm very, very excited to have, who I'll introduce last. Mike, Balls of Steel. Now, let me say this, Mike, real quick. I was remiss not to mention on the show the last couple of episodes that I had the great pleasure of meeting you in real life a couple of weeks ago. You made the huge trip over from Long Island to Australia, and I've, guessing that you're having a blast, but it was such a delight to meet you in person, mate. How are you?
I'm good. I'm still in Australia right now. As you can see, the background's a little different.
That's right. Yeah, you're sitting over there in Perth, aren't you?
I am.
Mate, give every non-Australian listening your thumbs up or thumbs down on the get your ass to Australia advice.
Big thumbs up. Everyone should get their ass to Australia at some point in their life.
Wait, how much, from a percentage from 0 to 100, how much stuff is trying to kill you there?
Like 0.
The reports, he's finding out the reports have been grossly overstated.
It's completely overblown. The whole, everything tried to kill you in Australia. Completely.
You haven't lifted up your toilet seat and found a recluse spider there or nothing? That's what us Americans think.
Yeah, the shows exactly. That you guys get, it depicts you sit on the toilet in Australia and this toilet is a spider.
It really, we're all freaked out.
Oh, mate, I remember when I was playing rugby in South Carolina 15 years ago, I saw some of the shows they put on, like the Australia specials, and I was almost in tears at how much they dramatized the chance of death in Australia. It was fucking ridiculous.
Yeah, I'm surprised you aren't dead. Personally.
Oh, exactly. Quite frankly, the fact that I made it to 40 just the other week is a huge deal in Australia. We had a big celebration. Yeah, but we might as well introduce him now that you've heard him. Why not? No, it's all good. Look, guys, I have actually been trying to line up this guest for quite some time. I was giving him a big rap to some of the listeners the other day because I said he's got this one quality that I really, really, really appreciate in a person that is actually relatively rare amongst content creators or just people in general. I'm like, when I fucking message this guy, I love that he gets back to me almost instantly. Within 2 to 3 minutes, bang, boom, here's your fucking answer. Beautiful. Not getting back to you 12 hours later, not getting back to you a week later, or not getting back to you at all. He fucking just replies like he got an SMS, and I fucking love that. You all know him from, some of you might know him from obviously the League of Legends, world. He's now dived, so hard into everything classic. I'm sure he's a long-time WoW fan. Zyrene, mate, how are you?
I'm great, dude. And that's actually something that I've tried to you're the first person to mention that I do that, but it's something that I actually hold really dear to my heart because I worked at a gaming company, not Riot Games, but afterwards, where people would show up to a shoot and they'd be like, I don't know where this pro player is. He didn't respond. This shoot is all around him. And I'm just like, did they really not respond at all? Why? Wait, we just kept a schedule even though they didn't confirm. So yeah, I really appreciate that. You appreciate that because it's something that I put a lot of work into. And I think my girlfriend hates because we'll be sitting there on the couch and I'll just be like, hold on, I got to respond to this thing. Okay, we're good. But I think I might have ruined the moment. We'll go back to the show. So yeah.
Mate, no, seriously. I know exactly what you're talking about.
I'm the guy who can't put the work down. When I'm really passionate about it, I can't put the work down. So I really appreciate you getting me on this episode. I know before you've asked me to be on a warrior episode. You've asked me to be on a tank episode before. And I know I've been like a people's champion for some classes and some specs, but I really appreciate being on the Ulduar one because I know this is a very, very special instance for a lot of people who may not even play Classic WoW, who just have really fond memories of Ulduar in general. I think Ulduar is considered by most people to be the best instance of all time, to be the best raid of all time when it released.
Yeah, it's going to be a fun one, and I definitely feel you on the replies. My wife would sympathize with your girlfriend, where she's like, the amount of fucking times I've turned to my phone to reply to something and been incredibly rude. I know what that's about. I feel horrible. I apologize to my wife yet again for the millionth time. But also, let's say. I'll get into my whole diatribe about like content creators never replying to messages, and that's when I release my tell-all book. That's going to be a chapter in that one. But yeah, look, let's get into the next guest. Lord Narj, you were here talking Ulduar with us. What felt like 3 seconds ago, mate. Thank you so much for being back again. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I mean, I can't. It does feel like 3 seconds ago. Was really happy to play the PTR. I think I mentioned last time that I'm part of a dad guild, but as far as dad guilds go, I guess probably one of the more hardcore ones, but I wouldn't call us a hardcore guild. But to be frank, this was the first time we got our whole raid 100% into a PTR raid, which was awesome and goes to show kind of how excited people are. We didn't force it, we didn't threaten anyone, with anything, but people genuinely wanted to see it. And I would say about 40% of my guys never played the original, 60% have, but not necessarily at a super high level, and some have done it kind of all. So it's really exciting to see how everyone from top to bottom, myself included, having cleared it originally, not all hard modes back in the day, but most of it. I was personally extremely excited. To Mike's point, I really think it's my favorite raid of all time in Warcraft. Period. When it came out, it was so different and so dynamic, and even today and this past week, it felt so fun, and I just very much enjoyed it, and thankfully everyone else seemed to as well. Obviously some bugs here and there that I'm sure we'll get into, but through and through, the nostalgia kicked in hard, so really happy to be on this chat to talk about it for sure.
Very good. Thanks for being here, mate. And we'll turn now to a fellow Australian. Mate, Nogs, I have to say, I was telling the story about how I was pestering Zyrene to come on the show because he and I vibed well on he and Snow's podcast. Mate, you have a similar origin story where you came on Countdown. You've been on twice in the past, and I love your vibe. I reckon you're just... I called Lord Narj the Rookie of the Year on the last episode, and as soon as I said that, I was like, "Fuck! What about Nogs? Maybe I have to do co-Rookie of the Year." Mate, I've been pestering you so much to come back on the show, and you're like, when will this cunt get off my back? And you're here now, and I'm so happy. Thanks for being here, Nogs.
I appreciate it, Josh, and everyone else in the call. Yeah, I couldn't believe it because I was just a viewer, and then one day you were like, "Hey, if anyone's in the chat and they're bored, come on, have a chat," and I got invited back, so very keen and happy to be here.
Mate, I
can't tell you how many viewers like actually know a bunch of shit. Like it's really awesome that you brought on a viewer. Like, legit.
Mate, well, that's my show, Zyrene. That's my whole show is the viewers. So
that's awesome.
You're gonna get blown away by just I pull in anyone. I'm like, oh, you listen to the show? Come on and talk about it. And it's funny again when I do my tell-all book. I'm like, how did I not? It's dodging a bullet is the wrong term, but I'm like, how is it that I've never vetted a guest? I never screened them. I've never done anything about like asking them questions or checking anything. I do the blind leap of faith and I go, oh, you want to be on my podcast? No worries, come on. And I literally talked to them for the first time on the show. And for 5 years, mate, every single one of them has been fucking brilliant. I'm very, very lucky to have people like Nogs. But Nogs is somewhat of a self-proclaimed acolyte of North. I refer to him as the Australian North. And we're lucky enough to have the real North on the show as well.
Need a drink, BRB.
Absolutely. North, brother, how are you? Welcome back. It's been too long.
It has been far too long. It's great to be back. I hope you're doing well. Because I feel great, and I'm super excited to get into this. Ulduar was a ton of fun, and I can't wait to talk about it.
I'm doing.
And I think that all the stuff that you were saying about your show, as much as you are kind of you're tooting your own horn a bit, I think it is very true. I very fondly remember when I first came onto the show, and it was through like a random Reddit post, and you were like, I'm looking for people of every class because I have this podcast and I want to talk about classes with people. And I was strung out as hell, like grinding for several days on Northdale in Netherguard Keep Mines. I was dying over and over again because I was so excited to talk with you about it. Manic as hell. It was a ton of fun, and yeah, I love it. So it's great to be back.
That's the way, and look where we are now. Exactly. But North, I also should say, I'm very excited to pair you up with. Obviously, Mike loves you. I'm sure Lord Narge is a fan as well. But I'm very excited to pair you up with Zyrene. I think you've got two big personalities in you and Zyrene here. But also, I think it's great to have you here with Nogs, who's such a big fan of yours.
Well, I mean, Nogs has great taste, right? He is a man of very refined ideas. So obviously it's a pleasure to be on with him.
He's like a favorite TV show. It's like you go in and out of watching him, but no, I will never forget North's videos in classic vanilla. His dueling videos on the Mage. And then the next minute I open Twitch into a random stream and he's on Wes's stream doing some IRL content and some just chatting. So you can never predict what this guy's going to do. It's amazing.
I'm glad we have one fan of him and one person who fucking hates him. So you know, you left me with the other mages. Do you know who the other mages were that you left me with? I'm just saying.
I love
EFG is my greatest disciple. Tony is a man of many. He is the best. He is the best mage to ever grace classic World of Warcraft, and
Tony is great.
He credits me as his teacher, and that I
sometimes
I
the teacher
surpasses
the master, and that's always great to see. You know, I love Tony.
I soar with joy. Tony's great. That being said, yeah, the mage core that I left was there was a that was an interesting time.
There
was a NetX in there, I think. No, I'm just kidding.
But a taste of the Zyrene North electricity that I'm looking forward to through this one. All right, boys, let's fucking serve up the spiciness. Let's get into our first topic. Obviously, the whole thing is about Ulduar and the PTR, but I've got a few little subtopics that I want to divide this one up to as I hear Zyrene crack a cold one, and this is going to be a fucking good one. So here we go. Guys, I wanted to dive into the concept of difficulty in general. Maybe not. I mean, I was going to say, obviously in Wrath Classic and the Classic franchise as a whole, but maybe we can, broaden the scope to MMOs in general as well. But it has been somewhat of a bugaboo topic for me over the last few years in going back and forth. I don't chip in. I just read what other content creators say. I don't really get involved because I'm an asshole. I read great takes from like Zyrene's takes in the Blizzard content creator Discord that I just watch from afar. And Zyrene actually is, I'm sucking your fucking ring hole here, Zyrene, and I don't normally do that to guests on the show, but you are very, very good and I was saying to my wife the other day, Zyrene is very, very measured in this content creator Discord where he doesn't, fuck about. He just gets in there, he leaves his feedback and he gets out and it's good feedback and he's not there. Some of the other conversation in there is fucking weird and lame, but anyway, I won't get into it. But I really appreciate the conversation that sometimes comes up amongst content creators about how difficult do we want this game to really be? And where is the breaking point for this player base? Now, I, for one, think that we sort of saw the breaking point in TBC with Phase 2 when we got pre-nerf SSC and TK. We sort of pushed the player base to a point that they got a little bit uncomfortable, and I'm happy to be shouted down on this one if I'm wrong. I feel like we got quite a bit of quitting going on. I've never seen the subreddit turn into just a massive recruitment thread like it did. It was a weird time for the game, and I point to the difficulty and go, look, whether you like it or not, classic players might say they want a hard game, but in reality, they fucking don't. Because as soon as they get pushed just a little, like a light shove to the chest, they go, nope, I'm out. I don't want a bar of this. No prog for me. Now here we are at Ulduar PTR, and we're getting promised, quite frankly, what is the hardest content that the classic player base has ever had to deal with, more than likely. We've seen a bit of it on the PTR. So my question to the whole crowd, actually, no, I'll start with you, Zyrene. You're the all-star. You can start this one off, and we'll see where people go from there. Zyrene, do you feel that, obviously some of this hard mode is optional and everything, but do you feel that the game should offer a retail-esque experience of 11 out of 10 difficulty across the board, or are you more of a proponent of, hey, some things can be hard, some things can be easy, maybe a mixture's the best?
So I will address that immediately and say yes. I do think that it should offer a different difficulty that is harder. right? Speedrunning exists, and I'm a big speedrunner. It exists because we want to create artificial difficulty for content that's easy. When you look at something like you were talking about with Vaj and Kalefoss, most of the time in SSE and TK, people had cleared everything except for Vaj and Kalefoss potentially. And that's because mind control is a fucking artificial difficulty creator where somebody in your raid, RNG wise, has been MC'd. And if it wipes threat or anything like that, or it's somebody that's a key member in your raid, it gets MC'd, it's a bad time, right? So I think artificial difficulty is kind of bullshit to some degree. But I think that you should have an option going back to Ulduar that you can opt into these things. I think that a regular guild, a dad guild, can actually do Yogg 1 week 1, right? Well, Yogg 1 with Thorim enabled. I think you can do it week 1. I think that the highest guild is going to struggle with Yogg 0, but I do think that should be option that there should be something you opt into, right? Yogg 4, Yogg with all of the keepers enabled, pretty easy, right? It's something you can do. And just to remind everybody, Yogg 1 and Yogg 0, only difference in loot is Mimiron's head. So if you're somebody who's not going for Death's Demise, just do Yogg 1. You don't have to stress your guild out. And I think that's going to be a big issue here is people are going to be like, we got to do the hard mode Hodir. We got to do the hard mode Thorim. We got to do the hard mode Freya. Like, you don't have to do the hard mode week 1. What are you going to miss out on? You're going to miss out on a tiny bit of loot upgrade for 1 week? Like, I've missed a week in Nax Ramus and my rogue is like 3 pieces away from Bis gear. Like, you can miss a week of doing the best content possible or the highest loot content possible. It's totally fine. You can opt into it because, like, my personal take is that the Ulduar right now that we're getting, aside from XT, that's a different tangent. Aside from XT, everything is pretty doable and the loot reward is nice and it's going to be something that upgrades your gear quite substantially, but it will make the subsequent weeks even easier. This gear is better than the gear that anybody ever had in Ulduar back then, and will make the content even easier than it had ever been. Even though you have pre-nerf states of some bosses, like Hodir 2 minutes instead of 3 minutes. You're capable of doing those things with this better gear. And with the updated, like, kind of everybody knows how to do these bosses, how to do top DPS, etc. So yeah, I personally agree that it should be a harder version of the game that is available. Because, in my opinion, this is a personal take. I think that WoW Classic is not just WoW. It's not Wrath of the Lich King. It's Wrath of the Lich King Classic. And the Classic kind of asterisk next to it, to me, means Wrath of the Lich King, updated for a current modern audience. That is what the asterisk, that is what Classic means to me. It's been updated for a modern audience to some degree. Whether it is completely tailoring to them or not is, beside the point. But in my opinion, it's something where if DKs are doing insane amounts of damage right now with their gargoyle, we've updated it to some degree for that. We've given you the pre-nerf bosses. So, yeah, to answer your question, yes, I do think that they should be updated to some degree in difficulty that allows you the option to do it. But Ulduar is kind of the prime example of you don't have to opt into it. You could just opt out and do the easy modes and then do your 10-mans, and the next week we try for Hodir, right? That's what I think.
Absolutely. We'll put a pin in the hard modes and not for everyone point that I want to come back to in about 5 to 10 minutes. It's a great point to raise. Lord, I just want to interject real quick. Lord Narch, let me throw it to you because Irene just mentioned something that we talked about in the last episode of the show, which you started to mention the concept of, RNG, the RNG factor in raid fights. And I had a few questions for you about how the player base might feel about, RNG, and we went back and forth on a couple of things. Let me just ask, I thought of this question as Cyrene was speaking then. In regards to SSC and TK in phase 2 of TBC, do you feel that it was like of the bullshit RNG factor that had people walking away from the game back then? Or was it the overall concept of just hard wiping and a dislike of progression?
That is so tough because I actually have that conversation within my guild, right? So first off, I'll agree with Cyrene about the RNG being really, really, really annoying stuff, right? Like MCs is something that no one has ever really liked. And although it's handleable to some degree. It does suck that weeks of preparation can just get kind of wiped out by something almost unavoidable, right? I'm not going to say completely, but almost. And some cases, like 0.0% chance, 0.01% chance of like not dying, right? And an example is, right now Nax is easy. No matter what you do, no matter how fast you're doing it, it's easy, right? What is everyone trying to do in Nax right now? It's Immortal, right? Because we've done everything else. So if you haven't gotten Immortal yet, that's the only thing to do in the game right now. And I would bet my top dollar that the one thing that good guilds, right? Guilds that technically should be getting Immortal almost every week are losing it on the KT fucking MC because of some stupid, and not even like, listen, if you cleave someone down, that's your fault. You're bad. Like, don't cleave, right? But if you get MC'd on top of a void zone and that shit runs out right as that void zone pops, I'm furious, right? Like I'm like, come on, like what do you do? Clone? I guess. Like, I mean, it's just really frustrating, right? So there's some moments, or when you MC someone and it friggin' goes away and he ran away and entombs 5 other people, something that really, really, really can't reasonably be avoided by skill and preparation bothers me a lot, right? So that's my bit on
Okay.
RNG.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Wait,
go ahead,
let,
buddy.
let,
Go,
let, let me
Zarain.
like counter that a little bit. Where I'm like, now at this point with Kel'Thuzad, Kel'Thuzad, I do think that like to even I think like yesterday, I played with one of the best Frosty Ks in the entire fucking world, Jake, and I got MC'd on Kel'Thas. He rocket booted out, death gripped me out of the melee, and then they cloned me. And I sat there and I went, what the fuck? Like, I was like, I'm not usually impressed by individual players, but the fact that Jake remained number 3 or 4 on overall damage, rocket booted out, death gripped me out, and then chains of iced me, and then they continued to just cyclone me over and over again until I was ready to come out. I sat there and I went, holy fuck, like that's actually a top tier player. That's somebody who sits there and goes, damage doesn't matter. We're going to kill the boss, right? We're going to kill it eventually.
Nogs.
What can I do to actually mitigate the issue of mind control? And back in the day in like Vaj or Kael'thas, the reason I think that those in particular were bullshit because Kael'thas in particular could MC your tank, right? And the solution is like bring 4 tanks. Right? That's not really a solution that's something I think is actionable, right? Whereas I think of something like, oh, you can MC somebody on an Immortal run. If your players are good enough, they can avoid this, right? The variance. Because I think that some guilds, like the variance of an Immortal run, let's say it's like a 9 to like a 2. A 2 guild or a 3 guild could maybe get an Immortal run if they're very lucky, right? Their dumb players get the positive charge on Thaddeus. They can go positive portal every time. Oh, it doesn't swap. I didn't even pay attention to that swap. They can luck out into that Immortal run, right? But if you get thrown every curveball possible by the game, the players who are a 9 can make it through in that situation. Now, the 10, I put that as something where it's unreachable, where maybe there's a boss, maybe there's a situation where somebody has to die. I don't think Kel'Thuzad is that boss, though. I think if you are good enough and your players are good enough, you can make it through that. That's why I don't think that's considered, in my opinion, artificial difficulty for that mind control. But as a tank in particular, when there's an untauntable boss that drops your threat, fuck that shit. Fuck that shit. That's actually so stupid to have in the game.
Nogs, I shouted you out during that.
Cancer.
I shouted you out during that spiel, Nogs, because you told us a story just the other episode about a fantastic druid in your raid that put his pass aside to ensure the raid survived, and it led me to a question again, spawning from something that Zarain just said, where also spawning, piggybacking off of the great conversation that Sarth and Crix had on their podcast just earlier today, The Classic Life. Please do go and listen to that as well, guys. It's another great World of Warcraft classic podcast. Big love to Sarth and Crix for what they do over there. It was mentioned while they were chatting about really the need, due to the difficulty of these hard modes that we're getting in Ulduar, maybe to, stop the greed. Like, greed isn't going to work in, at least in the early phases of trying to down these bosses in hard mode. Put your fucking, your past brains aside and do what it takes to survive and ensure that the boss goes down. And that might, put a bit of pressure on some of these greedy players, so to speak. Do you think that's going to be an issue for a bunch of the player base to actually put team first?
100%. I think what sums up TBC versus Wrath difficulty best is RNG versus personal responsibility. So what we're going to see in Ulduar is not bad RNG things that kill us. It's going to be personal responsibility of each player. If it comes down to that, I'm on a Feral Druid DPSing and I out-threat the tank, despite the tank not pressing globals and making his own errors. If I die, that's on me. Like, I can blame the tank all I want, but that greed is going to get people killed 100% in Ulduar. Staying in for that extra tick, that extra cast. No, just stop casting, do the mechanic. That's the priority, is to get through and live.
Very good. Mike, you've been... sorry, go Zarian.
Sorry. I want to interrupt there and say, like, your tank is shit. Like, your tank on that fight needs to do more threat. If he needs to wear something that makes the healers have to heal him more... Because when I think of something like RNG versus the other points that we're making, I'm thinking of, like, Thorim. Thorim does a thing on hard mode and like the rest of it where it's like Blizzard goes around the room, he sits there, he'll charge in a corner and then he'll shock that, right? He'll shock that corner that he's already thrown the little or seen the little lightning bolts comes towards him. In my opinion, bad RNG is where he shocks that corner 3 times and your DKs can no longer use their anti-magic shell because they used it on the first one. They can't have a divine sacrifice come out. They have to move. But maybe a chain lightning comes out at that point and it chains between the melee and doubles its damage, triples its damage, quadruples its damage, right? That's for me the RNG bullshit where in Ulduar you go, I have to change my comp. Like for me, Ulduar, like just to like reveal to you guys, Death Knight stacking is very big in Nax. In Ulduar, we will Death Knight stack for some bosses, but we will literally in the world or like not world first race, but the race to server first against fucking Fusion, who's amazing. Shout out to those guys. We will be swapping tanks, DPS, healers. We'll be swapping people because there are bosses that are not melee friendly at all, and you want to minimize the RNG as much as you can. And that's the big difference in Wrath of the Lich King is things like, yo, this guy shocked the corner 3 times. There's no in-place mechanic that says Thorim cannot shock the same corner 2 times, 3 times, 4 times. There's nothing like that, right? There's no barrier that stops that from happening. They just go, just let it ride. Just let it happen. If it happens, it happens. Right? And that's
if you're really comp switching for Thorim though, like is your guild actually that terrible that you need a comp swap for Thorim, my guy?
Well, yeah, if you have 4 to 5 people in each stack, yes, you do have to swap it.
You've 15 melee in your raid. Christ Almighty! Yes. I mean, sure,
we had 14
that's a bit ridiculous.
When I counted on stream, we had 14, and then when we did Yogg 0, we had 7. That
is God himself, Agron, coming down from on high to punish you for the awful Death Knight stacking that you participated in. It's terrible. Yeah. It's cringe. It's fucking awful. People have been doing it. I fucking hate that shit. I hate the we need more Death. It's Nax. It is Nax. It is Nax Ramus. Why are you trying hard in Nax? I cannot fathom that shit.
Yeah. I mean, whoa. Nax is still a phase of the game that I care about. You know, I care about the game.
I mean, but I think the bigger threats that you have there, or to be honest, like the Yogg, the stacking that feels really bad, I think, is Hodir. I think Hodir feels a little bit bad for people for like a lot of reasons, but it's just like casters are so juiced on that because of how Singed works. And if people aren't familiar with the fight, basically there are a bunch of buffs that go out because Hodir is 30 million health. You have to do it in 2 minutes. Normally it's not possible, but there are a bunch of buffs that go out. One of the buffs is a fire. And that fire increases magic damage taken by 50% when it's fully stacked up. Melee are useful to stack it up. It's really nice for them, right? But past that point, 50% damage is going out, and you want casters on that in every single situation. If you don't have them, you're just fucked because it's a 2-minute race, right? So
are you still doing fucking Malagos, dude? Are you doing Malagos right now?
No, I'm not doing. Oh, can you hear my keyboard?
Oh my god!
I can hear your keyboard. Are you on
mage? Oh, I'm leveling another mage.
You're leveling a mage? What the fuck, dude?
I'm leveling another mage, bro.
All right, North the mages. Okay.
North. This is my like 4th mage.
People come by my streams and they're like, should I roll mage or warlock? I can't choose. And I'm like, do fucking warlock. Like
For
there are
sure.
never
Warlock is-
Wow.
there are
They're-
never
they're-
enough
no,
warlocks.
Warlocks are so nice. Like Warlock on Hodir, for instance, and this is a tangent, but
Insane.
Warlock on Hodir, so juicer because you sit in a beam that gives you like what 135%, 100% haze. I forget what the
Haste,
haste
yeah.
is. Gives you
Yeah,
a shit
they're
ton of
juiced
haste,
on every
and
fight,
then
dude.
your corruption. Well, they're juiced on most fights, but your corruption there, right? Because it's a fight you want to take the least amount of healers to, but you're taking some damage, right? Like if you don't move, you're taking damage. But their corruption is slamming so fast that the siphon life is healing them for so much that they don't even care. Like they could just stand
don't
still
care.
for the most part. It doesn't fucking matter for them.
Yep.
Which is pretty sick. It's a little broken, and that feels really bad for the class deck. So I think that content should be difficult. I think that they should offer that difficult content, but it's extremely hard to walk that line for like, okay, well, it's hard enough that now you really need the if you want to make it legitimately challenging, it's gonna make it because the classes aren't homogenized in the way that they have been before. You have a better step in the right direction because of how many shared buffs there are in Wrath, obviously, but you're still gonna force like very specific comps if fights are actually that difficult. So I think fights like Hodir kind of border that. It's not that hard. You're right. You can do it with a worse comp. It's not that bad of a check. But fights like Steelbreaker, like Firefighter with low gear levels, Yogg Zero I haven't really touched, but Vzax. Like all these fights, like Algalon as well, like they require very specific comps, and that does feel kind of bad because that feels unapproachable for some people that can't just have 3 characters ready, and that is the thing that I will lament. Right, I know that. Like yes, I want difficult content. Yes, I enjoy it not just being the artificial. Okay, now we do easy content fast. I like that it's dynamic and it's the way that it was originally intended. But the comp switching feels bad, I think.
What in Algalon and General do you think needs swapping?
Generally speaking, I have seen maybe this is because our healers are bad. This is true. This is true. Healers bad. We have been running 3 tanks because we are taking too
For
much
Algalon?
damage. Yes.
Yeah.
He hits like a boat on steroids being lifted up by the Titanic on steroids, being lifted up by like the largest fucking rock, and he just fucking every single. If you're not under a cooldown, it feels like the tank just dies. Like every
Yeah.
second, like if you're not under a cooldown at any given moment, he just immediately and that I like that because he is the optional boss of optional bosses. Like he is the optional boss. That's cool. That's sick that he's like so for Algalon, it doesn't feel as bad, but for things like Firefighter that are even required to go and see Algalon, right? Like needing as many healers as you need because of how difficult Phase 2 is, for instance, right? And Hodir wanting all that caster stack for week 1, especially when there's this weird bug where because Flash Freeze is on a variable, goes back to the RNG thing, because it's on a variable timer, you can get a Flash Freeze that casts at 158. And if you kill him at 158, he will not die. He will finish the Flash Freeze and you will lose. And he is you can't save him at that point. Yes, he will finish the animation. And I've submitted that bug. I've talked to the team. It's a terrible bug. It's an awful bug. If you literally get it at 159 and he is at like 1.7% health and he pushes at 1.6, if you get him there, he will not push. He will go to 1 health and he will finish his animation. He will throw the hammer.
I think that's a pretty easy change because I think there was a change later on that was if Hodir threw out the thing that would destroy the cache, right? Like if you were at like 301 and he was throwing the cache, if you killed him during that time, the cache the little projectile he would do no damage to the cache. So I think you could kill him at 1. So I think that fix shouldn't be too hard to do.
No, I hope they determine.
So
like
I didn't know about that one. That
was
one's actually really interesting.
Yeah, because it's like you have to be even more, and I think that's what pushes the comp because you have to push it even more towards. We have to be so safe. We can't do this at 158 because it could just screw us. Right?
If you get
like early flash freeze.
If it hits 2 minutes, no matter what he's doing, does he actually just go like, "Oh, that thing's dead"?
The animation, the emote plays. No animation plays. No hammer is thrown. This happened to our guild because we're not very good at it. We had like a ton of casters and we were just trying it. And we saw the push and we were like, okay, let's do this. We want to get on other hard modes. We pushed it. He was sitting at 1 health at 159, sitting at 1 health. The text played. Hodir shatters the cache. The cache was not shattered. The cache was alive. He finishes the flash freeze, goes friendly, throws the fucking hammer from out of left field and fucking breaks the cache.
While he's friendly?
Yes, while he was friendly. So that's fucked.
Okay. All right.
So
that's fine.
I want to interject
Go,
real
mate.
quick because I'm listening to two really solid players. North is obviously shitting on his rate a little bit, but I'm sure his rate is fucking stellar.
We're gonna make it
you
stellar. It's good.
got-
We're gonna make it stellar.
I know you are, buddy. So I'm like sitting here not really believing a word you say about your healers being bad. So I'm like,
Wait.
No, before
at
the
least
healers
you
you
blow
watch
up-
this, if the healers watch this, I'm gonna get fucking reamed.
You're gonna get
Holy
flamed,
shit!
dude. You're gonna get flamed.
Naj, I want to say one thing before you blow up here.
Yeah, I'm not blowing up. I'm not blowing up.
This is hard mode, but it will be easy.
That's
It
exactly.
will
It'll be
so
super
that's-
easy a couple
So
weeks in.
that's
It will be.
exactly what I'm saying. Both of you guys are having this conversation about like kind of it kind of sucks that I have to have the perfect thing for this, perfect thing for that. And I'm like,
Yep.
these guys are talking about in order to finish it in the first 5 minutes of launch. Like this isn't relevant, right? So this is relevant to
fair.
you, right?
That's fair.
But this isn't relevant to any. And I'm in a good guild, but this conversation is so above like what I'm even looking at. You know what I mean? Like you guys are talking about being the first to finish this shit in like it's one of the top out there, right? And that's great. And by the way, respect. Like obviously it's gonna suck that 3 weeks from now you're gonna be bored with everything, but
It's not what it's balanced around. It's not balanced
but
around that.
it's exactly, and it shouldn't be, right? Because most people aren't even like me. I mean, most people are even beneath what I'm rating at, right? So normal was easy. Okay, like very easy, even by our standards, normal. We almost finished the entire raid, and when I tell you we really dicked around, we really dicked around. And that's fine because we're looking at doing some hard modes, early hard modes, and just based on videos and what we're seeing, they look hard, right? They don't look like totally pushover. They don't look impossible, but they look really hard. Yogg Zero obviously looks very, very, very difficult, and Algalon, thank God, is a legendary fight. Looks very, very difficult. But like you guys are saying, I expect us to bang our head against this. But once again, like you said, sooner than not, for most good to top guilds, this is going to be easy. And I don't know yet if I have a problem with that, because as it stands right now, I think I'm personally going to get a lot of really great playtime out of this, like a lot of really great rating.
Yeah, I agree with that. I do think that we need to put that asterisk so like people really understand. We're not saying it's going to be like, I'm saying it'll be easy, right? It'll be easy eventually, right? When you have enough eye level, these are buffs to items that have never been seen. It's unprecedented
Huge
buffs
eye level.
to Wrath of the Lich King items that have not been seen before. That people will be slaughtering this content. Like, for example, like on Yogg Zero, I don't know how much you guys are familiar with Yogg Zero. On the third phase of Yogg Zero, he starts at 30%. And then he does this thing where he throws a beacon at 3 ads, and it will heal AoE around them to whatever was around it when it hits. So the first one does 3. You pull those 3 out, boom, those 3 things only heal those ads instead of Yogg. The second one is 5 people, 5 ads. And most people will be like, damn, that's a lot. We got to have 5 things that drag these things out. How many tanks are we using? How many hunters are we using, etc.? What's going to happen is you're literally going to do the first one, and then the second one, your tank just rocket boots against the wall, causes the mobs to do a semi-evade, which is actually a bug at the moment that people are exploiting to do Yogg Zero on 2 pulls instead of 3, which, 2 ad phase shadow beacons instead of 3. Yeah. So, yeah, it's a big deal. So people are kind of like, they're already doing things to min-max, and if you have gear, you're not even going to have to pull them out. One's going to go out, and I'm just going to be like, all right. And the ads come back. Oh, look, boss is dead. Oh, man, that was a lot of damage you guys did. We had a real good raid. Thanks so much. Let's get that Murmuron's head to everybody. So, yeah, it's going to be a really weird time. Right now, I think going into Ulduar will be some of the most fun that people have had challenging themselves, challenging their guilds to see how many hard modes they can do. But after that, oh man, I think it's going to be, we're going to be in Nax Ramus by week 7, It's going to be one of those things where you're just sitting there going, this is really easy for us to do. And that's one
inevitable,
of the
right?
Yeah, it's inevitability.
Right? It's like so hard. It's so hard not to do that because, they buffed the gear, sure.
But
and
gear is supposed to feel rewarding, right?
Yeah,
Getting the gear
I'm not
is
mad about
supposed to be
it.
rewarding, right?
But I'm saying they buff the gear, right? They pre-nerf Ulduar, so let's say they buff Ulduar, right? But the players, the humans are buffed. We're 15 years wiser and better, and this game has been beaten the shit out of, right,
Yeah.
for 15
Yeah.
years. I mean,
we know the strats,
we
but even
beat
if we
it.
didn't
know
know
the
the strats,
strats. We know the strats. We
But
know
like,
the
here's the
paths.
nice
We
part
know
was
the
the nice part
classes.
was
go ahead.
I think the nice part was is that at the beginning of this, and like you had this little meta sort of that enveloped and right, obviously a lot of this happened on PTR, all of it happened on PTR, where people didn't know the strats because some of these versions of these fights we have never seen, right? Like static overload was removed very early on from the Iron Council, and it ends up being not like a very big deal, but some mechanics were also removed from Thorum very early, were removed from Hodir even very early, were removed from like pretty much all like around the boss. And so you had a situation where people went into Freya on day one. They were like, holy shit, this boss is hard. How do we deal with these detonating and then they were like, oh, well, we can just entrapment, we can use typhoons, we can use bops on Demo Locks.
We could use a warrior tank. We could use shockwave.
Let me,
Like,
guys.
there are so many cool tools, and so you have this. Yes, you have this comp thing that I'm lamenting. I'm like, oh, the comps, but I'm snapping out of it a little bit. Yeah, if you want to clear week 1 with max gear, for sure, you're gonna have to min-max your comp. If you want to guarantee these kills, you're gonna have to min-max your comp, and that's okay because at the very cutting edge of the top.
Let me jump in after this, North. Let me jump in now. That's sorry, Mike. I want to throw it to you, and then Nogs, listen up. I want to inject you guys. And then we'll throw it back to these other brilliant guys. Now, listen, there's an old adage in old school journalism when I went through journalism school, which is if you're getting gold, shut the fuck up. And so that's why I've been very quiet. You guys have been fucking brilliant, and I've been loving every second of it. A lot of modern journalists don't adhere to that. They inject themselves too often. But that was fucking great. Thank you so much, guys. Mike, I am so sorry. I normally give grief to other content when they leave one guest quiet for too long. You have been very polite. Mike, let me throw you in, and you're actually going to get the hardest question, my friend. Then I want Nogs to piggyback off of this, and then we'll see if the other guys have something to say in reply. Mike, before we really get, obviously we've touched on a bunch of the encounters already, but we'll get even deeper in the weeds very soon. But just to kind of finalize this more generic introduction to the topic of difficulty, I danced around it before, and you ran me through a brilliant introduction to Ulduar yesterday. You were very kind to sit down with me for an hour and talk to me about what all the different encounters do, because I have no fucking idea, because I've never done it and I've never watched any of the fights and I'm a fucking idiot. But, Mike, my question is, the guys have just touched on kind of the difference between, maybe what the first month will look like versus, after that when you've got a bit of the gear and everything. Obviously, it might be night and day. But before we get to that stage, week 1, Ulduar comes out. Ale said a very, very, wise thing, in my opinion, in the Discord the other week, where he just, in all caps repeated the following: hard modes are not for everyone. That's it. And I think it's 100% true. We've lived in a thing with WoW Classic where all the players seem to feel that they deserve every piece of gear. I should have full BIS all the fucking time because I'm the best player in the world, blah, blah, blah. Lord Narge and I talked about this last time. It's fucking bullshit. It's that mentality. But this might be a reality check for people. So, Mike, my question is, do you think that this concept of hard modes are not for everyone is going to sit well with the classic player base?
I don't think it will, but I agree that is the reality. I will be surprised if more than 5% of guilds in the entirety of Classic clear more than 2 or 3 hard modes week 1.
So, keep going.
And I think that's good. I think that's important. I don't think everyone deserves to have all this amazing buffed gear as quickly as possible, as much as they want it to. I think it needs to be earned.
Very good. And do you agree with the guys that obviously Ulduar is going to have a very different complexion about 4 to 6 weeks after launch once people have gathered a bit of gear from what they can do? And that's where we start discussing, was this easy after all? And it was just a gearing issue.
So I would say, I think for the great players like they are and the guilds they're in, I absolutely agree. But as someone who plays in more average guilds, I think no matter how much Ulduar gear they have, I think some fights are still just going to be really hard for people. I think for just maybe this is probably the most hot take I have. Most classic players aren't very good. It's that's my opinion. I think most aren't very good, and it doesn't matter how much gear you give them, they're still not going to be able to beat some of these fights.
No, I remember North boldly threw that out there on the show about 2 years ago. And I mean, for the most part, people tend to agree with that statement. I mean, average is average, and everyone says they're the best player in the world, but at a certain point, there's got to be a bell curve.
Logs.
Like,
Sorry, go ahead.
it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how much hard mode gear an average guilds get. They're never going to kill Yogg Zero.
Beautiful.
That's my opinion.
Zyrene, I see you biting your tongue, and I can't wait to unleash you in a second. But one more question for Mike, and then we'll go to Nogs. Mike, you said to me yesterday when you were kind enough to give me that little walkthrough of Ulduar that you believe that Ulduar hard modes, pugs just won't be doing these. This, like, if you're in a pug and you're trying to do hard mode, maybe in whether or not you meant the first 6 weeks or the whole phase, I don't know. But you were like, just say goodbye. If you're a pug, it's not fucking happening. Do you still feel that way?
I still absolutely feel that way, unless it's like the most organized GDKP ever. Like the first month or like first 3 weeks, they're not going to be doing any hard modes. They're just going to want in there, get as much gear as they can, easily as they can.
All right, fair enough. Now, Mike, anything else before I throw it back to the Wolves? Anything you've heard that you wanted to jump in on?
I don't know. I think I just have to disagree with like Ulduar just going to be being so much easier, even with our gear being better. Even a month in, I still think a lot of these fights for a majority of the player base, I think are still going to be challenging. I don't think they're going to. They're just going to be pushovers.
They're going to be challenging, but it's and I won't belabor this. It's not that they won't be challenging. I think that they will be challenging. I think that they should be challenging. They'll be pushover for the better guilds, and we'll get an Axe Tournament situation for the very best guilds. But I think that it's going to be approachable. It's going to be doable. It's definitely not for everyone at all on week 1. It is definitely a worse than Vash and KT situation on week 1. That's 100% true. But if you get some of this gear and you do some of the easier hard modes and you approach some of the stuff like Yogg 1 Light. Yogg 1 Light's a great example. Irene brought it up. It is not that bad. And as you get the better gear, that's not just the hard mode gear that's buffed, you can approach things like Hodir, right? Like Thorim, like Freya after a little bit, because in reality, these fights aren't that hard. And then it's going to make the breakpoints in things like Iron Council, Yogg Zero, and Mimron and Algalon a lot more approachable. Not easy, but approachable.
Very good. Nogs, let me throw it over to you, and then we'll get back to the other guys. Mate, sort of the same question for you, Nogs. I'd be interested to hear your take. When I am really keen to see how the player base reacts to Ulduar. And what I asked of Mike was basically, is the player base on, and it's an impossible question to answer, but I throw it out there because I'm a fucking idiot and I like to hear people's takes. But, can you see the subreddit, the forums, the community reacting well once they figure out that their pug can't clear hard modes, and that, like we say, this concept of hard modes are not for everyone. Just because you play this game, you don't have a birthright to every mode, every piece of gear, blah, blah, blah. How do you feel about that?
I champion that statement, and I'm going on Team Reality Check, and I'm going with Mike here, because Zyrene, I think you live on another world, another planet. Rain is so much above the average, the casual guilds, the guilds that got stuck on Vash week 8, not week 1, North, week 8. Like these are guys that collapsed. I just think there's still personal responsibility, guys. You can be a full bis in Nax and still die to Swirlies, still die to Sarth. Like it's still a thing, and it's not going away in Ulduar. It's getting exaggerated even more. So no, I definitely think that the casual guilds, even the more semi-hardcore guilds, so they call themselves semi-hardcore, that clears all content, they're going to really struggle. It's going to be good for them getting a challenge like this, but it definitely won't be fixed by gear. I promise you now. You're going to see these Reddit threads that Josh was alluding to. They're already starting to come up just on PTR.
All right, Zyrene, mate, sorry. You were so polite. I saw you biting your tongue through all of that.
It's
Unleash on us, mate.
It's all right. I'm glad you picked up on that. I was on a soapbox for a while. I apologize for that. But I do agree with you, though, Nogs, to some degree. Because when you say the mode, when you say the saying hard modes are not for everyone, I immediately, as a player, sit there and go, I don't hear what you're saying. You're saying hard modes are not for everyone. Instead, I hear Hard modes are not for every spec. As a player, as a Ret Paladin, do I not deserve to do hard modes eventually? I find it very hard to believe that a Ret Paladin will be brought to a run for hard modes, full hard mode clear, until we have had all of the gear, until we have had everything. Because we're so much further behind than everything else. If we're a raid that runs 3 arms warriors, do we not deserve to ever do hard modes? Unless we sub some people out, right?
You do,
Because
but much later on.
Yeah, DPS checks push that back further and further and further, right? And because of that, that's something that has to be balanced by the Blizzard balance team or whoever's working on it to make sure that Ulduar is clearable by people who are in full Nax BIS and have the exact comp that they need to do, etc., versus the people who have done it, like you're saying, week 8, week 9, week 10, and you're sitting there with like 3 arms warriors, 1 Ret Paladin, you're just like, man, we ain't gonna clear this shit. Let's fucking kick these guys. They don't do any damage, man. Let's get them out of our raid. Like, come on, dude.
That's why Blizzard's 5-head, though. That's why they released Joyous Journeys, so that all the Ret Paladins and the Arms Warriors can fucking re-roll.
Yeah, that might be true, dude. They playing Warlock.
Got him.
They play Warlock, they play in Fire Mage, they play in Paladin of any other variety.
Dude, I'm gonna be real with you right now. Like the Ret Paladins are sitting there like Joyous Journey ain't enough. We need 100% buff. We need double Joyous Journey.
Well, let's dive in on that. Let me inject this quote for you guys. And first in best dressed on this one, I found this fun quote. Obviously, they're fucking around. It's very tongue in cheek, but here's from the WoW official forums. It says the following from Proctitus, a member of Hydra, who says, "I belong to a Discord that is a sort of council which decides what the new metas will be with each new patch. After weeks of heated debate, it has been decided that no semi-serious / hardcore guild will ever give Ret Paladins a slot in their Ulduar raid. Any guilds that do allow Rets into their raids will be noted as a joke and will not be taken seriously. This is bad news for Ret Paladins, but it is what it is. Top guilds who go for world first will be primarily stacking Death Knights. Time to re-roll before it's too late, guys."
Well,
now,
Warlocks, but you know,
it's
tongue in cheek, but let me ask the
It's
serious
tongue-in-cheek.
question as a result of that. Now, we talked about Ret Paladins on the last episode of the show and the plight of the Ret Paladin as they beg Blizzard to do something about their class. Now, we talked about what the effect will be in Ulduar, and as we've talked about class stacking and benching and whatnot, it's one of those things where outside, Zyrene, let me throw this to you first, and then the others can go off of what you say. I somewhat draw a parallel to the world buff meta, and let me explain why. Only in regards to just people falling in line, people seeing what others are doing, and then it becomes everyone's doing it. Do you feel like people will see the top guilds not bringing Ret Paladins, and then it becomes the norm, the thing, because, oh, they're doing it, so we're doing it, and you get this waterfall trickle-down effect?
I mean, that happens at the top level anyway, but the number 1 Nax speedrun right now is run by a prot warrior with a Ret Paladin. Noda runs a Ret Paladin. Noda runs a prot warrior. People are not going to mimic that unless they're good enough to do that and run the same exact composition as them. Wrath of Lich King is a little more comp heavy in terms of the decisions you make for why do you bring a prot warrior. I think in the top 10, the only 2 prot warriors are like me and the number 1 person, Phil West. And I think there might be one more that jumped up there. I think it might be Statement. I don't quote me on that. But I think there might be only 3 prot warriors in the top 10. And it's people who are like dedicated to the class, who love it, who understand the strengths of it. But when it comes to something like Ret Paladin, it's like, well, they bring Ret Paladin because they're 2 healing. Ret Paladin, in my opinion, is not dependent on your ability. It's dependent on everything else in the composition. Do we need 2 pally buffs, but we're 2 healing and only want 1 pally? That's what happens. If we're using a pally tank and a pally healer, no room for a Ret Paladin. It's all this fucking Lego puzzle that you sit there and go, how do we make sure we have 2 pally buffs, but we only use 1 Ret pally? Oh, wait, no, we use 1 holy pally, 1 prot, no Ret pally involved. So Paladins, that's what I think is the problem for Ret Paladin players. They do not feel like they are at the mercy of their ability, right? They feel like they're at the mercy of composition and the way that the Legos stack on top of each other. We happen to need a 2x1. Sorry, bro. You're a 2x2. You're too tall for this one. Sorry, Ret Paladin. It doesn't fit into the equation for them. So Ret Paladins feel that frustration. And that's what I think is the big thing for them. So yeah, to answer your question, I think that when it comes to classes like Ret Paladins, they are not really at the mercy of their own ability. You can be the best Ret Paladin in the world. You're not going to get taken to those hard modes, right? You're going to get taken eventually. But I think that people will have that trickle down and they'll try to mimic it, but one size doesn't fit all. Like, this is something that I talk to people about on my stream all the time. People ask for my BIS list. I'm like, dude, my BIS list is not for you. Like, my BIS list for my BIS list for my Paladin has 27k HP unbuffed. I'm 32k HP buffed with no commanding shout because we don't bring a warrior. Like, your healers are gonna fucking struggle healing me. Right? If you copy paste what I'm doing to you, that's not going to work. And just to go into like a tank tangent for a second, what makes you the tank of your raid are the choices you make around your raid. Do I need more threat because I have fucking pumpers in my raid? I got to wear more threat. Are my healers bored as fuck because we bring 5 healers to Nax Ramus, 3 healers, 4 healers? I'm going to wear a little more offensive gear. Oh, do we bring 3 healers, 4 healers, and they're struggling, and we don't have pumpers? I'm going to bring a little more tanky gear. The choices you make about your raid is what makes you the tank for your raid. Those are the choices that you make as a tank that are really important. And that's what I think people miss out on is people ask me for my BIS list. Like I said, I'm like, my BIS list is not for you. It's a hit cap, uncrittable, expertise cap set that you will never fucking use because you will die on patchwork, right? So I think that for people, you don't want to copy paste what other people are doing. You don't want to do that. If you take Phil West's set, if you take my set to your raid, you're going to get fucking flamed because you're dying. And people are going to be like, warriors are fucking paper. Let's bring the paladin in, the prop paladin in next raid. It's like, no, dude, my set is tailored to my guild. Phil West's set is tailored to his guild, right? That's what people need to understand. There is no BIS list for healers, for tanks, etc. For DPS, it's a little different. You sit there and you go, I'm going to do the most damage I can do. And you just fucking pick the things that have the best stats. It's not really something that actually people have to think about, right? It's not like retail where you go, oh, this is a lot of AoE damage. I'm going to need some versatility. It's not like that, right? That's something they added later on. So yeah.
I do wonder, the one thing that my mind gets cast back to and was brought up on the show recently as well was like, not so long ago when, you know, rogues and warriors in TBC were kind of getting the business, you know, from trying to get a dungeon, trying to get a raid. And obviously I'm talking about pugs. You know, this doesn't really, you know, apply to most
Nobody
guilds.
wanted 2 rogues. Nobody wanted 3 rogues, right?
That's right. So like I'm thinking more like, and again, I know this doesn't apply to most of the people on this call, but it's still something worth mentioning of like, when I talk about that trickle down effect, I do wonder, you know, I can personally foresee the scenario where your average Red Paladin sees an ad for, hey, Pug, 25 Ulduar, not necessarily doing hard modes, need DPS, and they whisper and go, hey, Red Paladin here, and they get a reply, lol, no. You know what I mean? Like, can you guys see that happening?
I mean, dude, I played a rogue during all of Vanilla Classic, and like I would like Vanilla Rogue and Classic taught me that I could be a group leader. I could invite 4 other people to my group because nobody else was gonna fucking invite me to their group, dude. They all wanted mages to AoE farm Zul'Farrak and stuff like that to level. Like, that is something you learn very early on to just embrace. But at the same time, I'm saying that's for me personally. For everyone else, yeah, people are going to look at it and be like, they're going to discriminate against Ret Paladins. They're going to discriminate against low DPS classes. You're not a warrior. Sorry, you aren't getting into our Nax GDKP, right? That stuff, I think, is very important. I'm talking about classic. Sorry, with Wrath of Lich King. Lol, Fury Warrior,
I was
dude.
about to say.
I was like, Fury Warrior.
Yeah, everyone's begging for warriors, bro.
Nah, nobody begging for warriors, man. Let's be real. But yeah, so at the same time, I think that it does set a precedent. Yes, people do look at the top, and I think Warcraft logs created this culture that people look at the parse culture, the culture where you look at the top logs, see what they brought. I do think, I will cede to you to some degree that yes. The top does set the precedent. And I sit there and as somebody who's actually in those logs, I sit there and I go, I really hope people didn't look at my logs because I used the wrong trinket on this fight. They're going to think that I think that hit is not very good. I wasn't hit cap for this fight. So somebody's going to go to their fucking GM and be like, sorry, bro, I wasn't hit cap for this fight. I saw Zyrene do it. And I'm like, fuck.
That's the thing that's always frustrated me, and when people look at that, like I had when I was leading PG with Mark in phase 6 of TBC, and when we were like doing a lot of theory crafting for tank stuff, I had that exact conversation with him, and I was like, listen, right, this guy might be running all this hit shit, but or all this mid stuff, but that might be because he can, right, like he has whatever tech that he has that we don't, that he can run all this mitigation, but we are ripping off of you every single pull. So either you doing something wrong, or we need to revisit your gear because this doesn't fully function for what we want. I do think Wrath is interesting in that it does actually provide some of these things to DPS because you can make those AoE decisions. For instance, right, a demo lock, and most of my theory crafting has been on demo this patch, can do a lot of things to change that. They can go imp spec to provide more utility to the raid, and on fights like Iron Council, it's legitimately a damage bump in a lot of cases because the imp can sit in the rune even when the rune's in a weird spot, even if the pet cannot, the imp can. And so you get to bring that health buff and you get to bring that maximization, but you also can choose to spec instead of in your pet, you can spec instead into meta if you want more AoE, if burst is really important, because that lets you get 2 immolation auras over the duration of one, even though it's a half immolation aura, over the duration of one entire use of metamorphosis. So I think that is really interesting in terms of how it begins to play out. It's not nearly as intricate as how it works with tanks, I understand that, but also I think it applies to Ret Paladin. Ret Paladin, when you move your mages off of Arcane, which you want to do on fights like Freya, on fights like Hodir, on fights like Mimron, it's huge. It's massive to have these mages on fire because there's a lot of ad control, and specifically fire is just insane in Hodir because of the crit buff. But because of these sort of dynamics, Ret becomes better and better because you might not have a lot of shadow priests. Your hunters might not be into replenishment as much. You might be running super low healers. And so the Ret Paladin kind of rockets up because, like, okay, are you really good at using your DSAC? Can you really like bop on the right? Like, are you bringing that utility that Ret Paladin brings? Because it does bring a lot of utility. And if your mages are swapping off the percent buff, you're back in the mix for, okay, now I've Legoed in the buff, because if we're having trouble in phase 3 of Mimron, right, the mages can fix that because the mages will bring down all of the assault bots and the junk bots, and they can have control over the ads at any point that they want.
But this is what makes WoW Classic such a weird fucking game, because it is not balanced every 2 weeks like League of Legends. Like normal, like retail WoW is balanced every month, every 2 weeks. Right now, it's like every 3 days on retail. They're going, Ret Paladin is balanced around ICC when mages are fire, and we have our 2 set that makes Divine Storm scale with haste. Ret Paladin is literally in a place where they don't scale with any stat but strength and crit, and they're sitting there going, wow, this is fucking terrible for us, right? So it's the whole idea of this class is not going to get any like time in the limelight at all until later. And that's kind of like TBC with Fury Warrior, right? Where people are like, oh, I won't play Fury Warrior through SSC, TK, until I get to, not even Hyjal. Warlocks are doing better there. BT, maybe a little bit. And then SSC, they were like, oh, we top damage now. Is that a fair thing to make people have to do for a class? Because that's the thing I think people, when I look at like Agrin and stuff like that, and his post about paladins and how paladins can play prot, they can play holy, they'll be overrepresented if we have Ret Paladin be too good. Is it a problem for people? Because I don't think people identify as a class. I think people identify as a spec.
They do.
I don't think
it depends. It depends, right? I mean,
go ahead.
I feel like mages. First
fuck mages. You play 3 DPS specs.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say, bro. I'm a mage, and we're like the master class, right? So, but joking aside, it is fair, and I'll tell you why. It's because we all came back to play this game, and everyone knew what was happening before the game came out. So it's not like anyone picked up a class and was like, "What? This isn't really good DPS right now." Like, no, you fucking knew it. And if you're still playing it, it's because you love it, right? One of our top players is a warrior. His damage sucks, right? Because he's a warrior, like, but he knows. It's what he likes to play.
I'm
If you're
sorry,
more
bro.
intense,
He's sitting there going, "Oh man, I'm gonna like it 6 months from now when I get a shadow
no,
mon."
100. But just so you know, he was 100% our first Shadow Lord. So yeah, 100%. But my point is, he planned that, right? He knew he was gonna, fucking choke on chodes all day, but he's gonna end up with a Shadow Morn. You play the game the way you want to play, and you know how it's gonna play out because it already happened. So like, if you're more intense, you have a couple characters, right? You want to play a Warlock phase 1 and 2, great. And then, but you really like Warriors and you have it on deck, right? You're taking it to GDKPs, whatever, and you come ICC, your Ret Paladin's good, whatever. So I think it is fair because it's the game. It's the game that came out, and we're all came back to play this game. And you came back to play whatever you play like 7 characters, but like these guys who came back to play like their rogue or whatever, they want to play their rogue. They know it sucks in the beginning. They know it's gonna get better later. Like. So I think it's fine. It doesn't need to be balanced every 5 seconds because then it's a different game. It's just a different game.
Let me jump in here, guys.
Wait. I just want to ask the question of like, hold on. I just want to ask the question of, do you think that Wrath Classic should be balanced every 2 weeks?
No. It's a different game. You make it a completely different game. I know it's weird to say, oh, a game shouldn't be balanced, but like, it makes it a different game. It's just not Wrath Classic. It's like, whatever you want to call it. I mean, it's copyright infringement on a game we used to play.
Yeah. I actually want everybody's opinion on this.
Mike?
Yeah, no,
I don't know that anyone.
Mike says
I don't
no.
know that anyone's going to agree with that. Like, no one is going to want it to be balanced every 2 weeks because it's completely
a question,
antithetical to
whether
like
or not
good
it's agreed
metas.
or not. Yeah, right.
That's fair.
Like, do you think it should be balanced every 2 weeks?
North?
No?
Obviously
absolutely not. Yeah, no shot. Like Rets, I heard this conversation. Rets just sit on the couch, wait your turn. You pick the Ret, you chose your class and spec over prog.
No, seriously.
You can take your one hard mode drip feed boss and you can kill it week 12 and you'll be fine. But you're not killing it week 1.
Or play another character, you know what I mean? And then play your Ret later. Or whatever. You had the choice. You knew what was happening. If this game was new
Did I
came
know?
out,
Did I know?
you
though?
knew. You fucking
Did I know?
You 100%.
Did I really know?
I don't necessarily think that they do, and I think that that's totally fair, right? Like,
I don't think Ret Paladin's new. I don't think Ret Paladin's new.
okay.
I can tell you how many fucking people were leveling Ret Paladins told there was
You're
good.
right. Ret Paladins, I want to say, specifically got the D a little bit. But for most characters,
Feral Druid's even
I would
worse.
say-
Feral Druid it was even worse than that. Feral Druid was like people, right? Like people.
I don't even know what
bitching-
those are, North. I don't even know what those
So-
are.
well, here's the thing, right? Like because on private servers, right? Like in which people like largely steal these metas from, they understand them based on them. So you can say that we know, until you're blue in the
Stolen
face 8 ways from
metas.
Sundays, but we don't. When people were like, "Oh, Arcane Mage can't be used in phase 1 of TBC," and they were, of course, they were because all the bosses were literally just like, "Okay, you kill it in 15 seconds,"
Exactly,
and so you
yeah.
can't you and people still, and I was on a podcast shouting about how dumb everyone was because they couldn't see that, but people still won't see
That's
it.
what I was
because
saying. You could see that.
I could, but most people, like the
Let
entire
me-
Mage Discord, was like, "We're
Let
going to
me,
need
let me
fire
jump
to
in.
help
Let
the
me jump in
warlocks."
after
Like,
this one. Let me jump in. I'll pull us back on track. I'm still laughing. I'll call the fucking meta police North for you on the theft of metas from private servers. All right.
No, but it just is we don't know, right? Like, and realistically, we don't fully know. And so, like, when Ret Paladins were strong back in the day, and they remember that, and they go based on that. They don't necessarily read the forums. They're not
Right.
they're not they're not trying to like read up on the meta. They just think, oh, I loved Ret back in the day, and it sucks that they're weaker than they think that they should.
All right. Hang
It does-
on. Nogs, listen up. Nogs, listen
The
up.
feels craft.
Nogs, can I ask a favor, mate? Can I ask you a hard question?
Of course.
All right, here we go. Here's the spicy one. Guys, this will be the last question before we launch into really the specific encounters of Ulduar. Obviously, we're doing what I normally do on the show. We started very generic. Now we're going to get rather specific after this question. But this one is a little bit of a spicy meatball, and it's actually very funny that a Gren's dropped into the chat just as I'm about to ask the question that gets a little bit critical of Blizzard. But Anyway, everyone's got thick skin here, so it's all good. Look, it's not necessarily a question aimed at attacking Blizzard, but more a universal pondering over PTRs. And I wanted to ask you this, Nogs, because I sit and watch what's been happening over the last week with the Ulduar PTR, and it comes up every time we get a PTR, this thought in my head. And look, I'm a fucking weirdo for thinking this. I get that. But I've been privately, I've been very critical of Blizzard regarding PTRs in a weird way, because everyone goes, oh, PTRs are so important. We fucking need it to test the raid. We don't want these things broken when they come out. Let's fucking go. And I'm kind of like, wait. This is their product. Isn't it their job to make sure it's good to go and deliver it to us? And I look at games like Final Fantasy XIV, which, and we're going to have to live in a hypothetical world a little bit where Blizzard does have an expanded team that could look at this and test more thoroughly and have far more QA people, blah, 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 blah. That doesn't exist right now, but put that aside for a second. Final Fantasy 14. Right? There is no PTR. There is no testing. Everything's fucking a surprise to the players. The new raids, it all comes out. They just drop it on you and they go fucking enjoy. And more often than not, it's in a really fucking good state. Everyone enjoys it, blah, blah, blah. That's great. People go, oh, wow, so that's what they've been working on. What a surprise. Oh my God, now we've got to work it out. We haven't been able to practice for weeks on a PTR. We've got to practice in fucking game and do the fucking content. I think that's wonderful, and I personally think that that's the way it should be. WoW players have been somewhat conditioned to a state where it's like, it's our job as like free workers to test the game for them and make sure all the kinks are gone. Obviously, we don't fix the kinks ourselves. They do have a team that does that, but we give the feedback that helps fix the kinks for Blizzard. And it's rubbed me the wrong way. It's like, mate, I don't work for Blizzard. I'm not jumping on a fucking PTR and doing their job for them. But WoW players have always been okay with it. That's just the way it's been forever, right? My very long question, Nogs, is how do you feel about PTRs in MMOs in general in this day and age? And are you okay with the players getting in there and getting their hands dirty and getting in the guts of things and giving feedback? Or do you prefer the onus back on the company, putting the onus back on the company for them to QA test it and surprise us?
Yeah, well, they used to do that back in the day. So we never had PTR raid testing, I think, until 2008 or 2009. We had there's an internal team that used to test raids for the development team. So I'm not sure why we're expected to do it, but on the PTR, I think the biggest and the first problem with the PTR is Blizzard don't assist us. All right, we get in there and we have to do our keybinds, macros, interface. There's no tool that Blizzard has given us to assist us copying over from our live character and macros and everything like that over to the PTR. So you've already got a huge hurdle and barrier to entry for most casual or just even most players in general. They don't want to spend all that time on the PTR and then for their character to be deleted, to be lost, for there to be outages. I just think that the way they handle the PTR could be so much better. We're giving them free testing. The more eyes and hands on the PTR could only leave them with a more polished product when it goes live. So huge missed opportunity, how hard it is to get on the PTR for most players. Of course, the sweaties, they're always going to be willing to do it. They don't have a problem.
Let me inject, Mike, let me throw it over to you. I want to hear from everyone on this topic before we finish it up. Mike, I want to throw it to you next, then we'll get to the others. Mike, let me just inject this quote that I should have injected earlier, which is the following from Schnacks over at the subreddit, who says this: I think it's kind of lame that guilds are able to do all the progression on PTR. It would have been hype if this was all going down on live servers. The race just becomes a who put more time into the PTR. Do you agree or disagree with that, Mike?
I kind of agree, but I think even if there weren't Blizzard official servers with this, there would these top guilds that are going for these world first, server first kills. They're gonna make their own servers and just like tune them aggressively to just however they can to sort of just prepare for these raids. I think like Nog said, to the average player, they don't want to fucking bother with the PTR. They want to do it when it's live. If the top guilds want to go there and just use the PTR as their progression, so the raids can be a lot better for the average player, like bug wise, and all that, I'm perfectly fine with it. I really don't see a problem with it.
All right, let me throw it over to Zyrene. Zyrene, and then we'll hear from Lord Narge, and North will bring us home. Zyrene, I'm not trying to be spicy, but I do, like I said, I've privately thought this. I've not come out publicly and sort of weighed in on this, but I'm like, I want to ask you, as a consumer in 2022, how do you feel about, obviously Blizzard has cut a lot of staff and you know, it's not really a reality we could live in right now with the game. But how do you feel as someone who pays for the game ongoing that the players are asked to basically do a lot of heavy lifting in terms of testing? Is that just the way it goes in gaming, or it could be another way?
It's the way it goes in gaming. I played QA for Riot Games in 2014 to 2015. I was the lead playtester on the champion named Rek'Sai that I don't know if anybody's familiar with, but as soon as the champion is released on live, I could have played the champion for 3 months straight. As soon as it is released on live, within the first 2 hours, there is more testing, more builds, more diversity in terms of how you played the champion, what role, what you did with it, than I could have ever done in 90 days. In 2 hours, with how big your game is. People will try different things that the QA tester never fucking thought of. So, yeah, to some degree, as a company, it's very cost efficient. It is very good. It is very smart.
Obviously, yeah.
To do those types of things,
It's
right?
incredibly
It is
smart.
very good, right? And I want to like swap this over to Mike. You said you kind of agree. So I don't think you don't. I don't think you do agree. It sounded like you don't agree that when it's like who put more time into PTR, it's like if you take the PTR away, then whoever put more time on private servers is the winner, right?
Well, to be fair, let me just.
Can I jump
let
in
me-
on that? Can I jump in on that? Is
Yeah,
that-
yeah, go. Then I'll go. Then I'll come back.
Wait. But before you guys jump in, as a guild, Rain on Benediction, who's competing against Fusion, who has done private servers, who has a lot of players from private servers, I feel the stress already of having to play against private server players who know the strats, who have done this, right? And I'm sitting there going, wow, like this really fucking sucks for me because they have PTR experience and private server experience, and we don't. We literally have like almost zero. I would say we have like maybe 2 to 3 private server players total in our roster. So whoever played private servers more wins. It's almost like the thing that happened with I want to say Sunwell or Black Temple, where it was like, well, whoever got the private server more won. But then it turns out when private servers go away, when PTR goes away,
Totally
the guild
fair
that has
point.
more characters wins.
Totally fair
Right?
point. Totally fair point. North,
Yeah.
did you want to jump in there?
I think that to an extent that's true. Like depending on the content, that's very true. So things like BWL, for instance, BWL is a very well understood instance. It's been iterated upon 1,000 times,
Yep.
and if they aren't making any effort to really change it, you see that in the race. Apes effectively did win that race. Why did they win that race? Well, they didn't actually win, and they didn't because of bugs, and that really sucks, right? Because they because of the Nefarian bug coming in and out all the way back in Classic, they were robbed from that. But they were where they were because they had done it 1,000 times, and no changes had been made. Ulduar's not the same. There is no version of Ulduar that looks like this on any private server ever, right? It doesn't
That's
look like this. It looks similar. It does look similar.
Are private servers harder? Are they harder?
It depends
yes,
on the
private
server.
servers
So generally speaking, it depends on the fight. But yes, like Mimron, for instance, is a gorillion times harder. But Iron Council not nearly as hard. Iron Council is not even remotely comparable. Yogg also much harder. Algalon, generally speaking, easier. So you have this sort of push and pull. It is a very different version, but I do agree. I think that I do agree with you, Josh. I lament it. I lament that we are part of the testing because I wish it were like Final Fantasy. I recognize that it can't be because of the practical limitations of that team. Blizzard wants to run it the corporate hand of Blizzard wants to run the classic team extremely economically.
Cost
wait,
effectively,
wait. Economically, how many players are in a Final Fantasy raid?
It's 24 in the largest one, and generally, what am I getting? 8 in other ones. How come?
But they're streamlined, so like the way that there's fight go are I think they're a little more streamlined in the ways that things work in World of Warcraft. So obviously, it's not a same 1-to-1. But I do wish that there were a lot less testing because how cool would it be if, right, like, because the thing that people were really having trouble with on this, even despite like Fusion had a ton of trouble on Freya, they smashed their heads against Freya, these people with so much private server experience. Why did they smash their heads? Because they didn't understand the strategy of getting the lashers away. And so you'd have that cool progression on live if they could hire those people. They realistically, they are expanding the team. They have been expanding the team. They really want to make those efforts. If you talk to the stakeholders that are public facing at Blizzard, they say that because they want more of that. Obviously, to some extent, it is harder to do, and it is really challenging. I'm not pissed off by it. I'm not like, oh, how dare they not have, how dare they use the players, because that's really their only option right now, right? Like the people who are staffing Blizzard's team, they're not the people making the decisions about necessarily, or sorry, the people who are testing this content who can't test it 18,000 different ways, right? Like because you are going to get so many more hands on it, so many more eyes on it, and so many more bugs that are rare and game breaking. Like Zyrene said with Rek'Sai, 2 hours after it launched, right? You realize that, wow, this is a fucking dog shit champion. Why did we? No, I'm kidding. But realistically, right? Realistically, it is a huge challenge for them, and I lament that it's not possible, because I would prefer this kind of thing to happen live, because then you would have, okay, it's not, oh, well, now everyone gets the Freya strategy. Freya is now a pushover, when people were saying, oh, this might be one of the hardest bosses, and then it's like, well, no, we kind of figured this out. This is kind of solved now, and if that solving happens live, that's kind of what's so hype about the race for World First, is that solving happens live. It's over much longer form, but you'd have that in its first case here, had the PTR been not released at all, if we could get a clean product, which a lot of ifs, right? But in an ideal world, of course, that'd be awesome, because then we wouldn't have the prog on the PTR. It wouldn't be, who spends the time in the PTR. Yes, it might be, okay, are you willing to go for the Herculean efforts of trying to like data mine this shit or whatever, but you're not gonna get the same version. A lot of it is gonna be, how clever are you at the end of the day? How quickly can you adapt to these mechanics? And I really enjoy that. That seems really cool that they get in retail that we don't get, and we could have gotten that if the team had been absolutely massive. But Blizzard would need to be committed. The corporate head of Blizzard would need to be committed to making good games over making money.
Let me
never
jump in.
going to happen.
Let me jump in for 2 clarification questions for Zyrene, and then Lord Narj, I want you to bring us home on this one. Zyrene, let me just firstly, Gren's been so kind. He's injecting some feedback here live in chat that I just want to throw your way, Zyrene. He says the following: it kills me. I'd love to be able to speak to this. I think I'll just say now that's a fair question, Josh. I don't have a great and satisfying answer, but I can say it's definitely a combination of what Zyrene is saying and private server players having their own tunable local servers to test on that they will use, and the fact that even with 20 or 40, etc., internal professional testers, when you get to the macro scale, you'll find a million things that might not happen internally, even if you run it repeatedly, which absolutely makes sense. I don't contest with that at all. And he says, I jokingly say a lot, if something is 1 in a million and you see it 15 times a day in WoW, it's because it's WoW. Zyrene, keeping that in mind, let me also, and I'm so glad you mentioned, obviously, Zyrene, you have a professional background in this field, so you're a great person to hit up for this. But two clarifications on what you said, or if I could throw a couple of wrinkles your way. From your answer, how do you feel about, though, the hypothetical world where we're talking about a new game like Retail WoW, or just a new MMO altogether, where private servers don't exist and it's not just who has access to the private server wins? That's question number 1. And then on top of that, question number 2 is, you mentioned class balancing in LoL, and players obviously finding a million ways to fuck with the classes. Does the same argument apply to raid mechanics?
Yeah. I mean, go look at the race to World First. What classes are they bringing, right? They're excluding some to some degree, right? You're sitting there going, they have one evoker. Like, what's going on? People will come to their own conclusions when it comes to new content that hasn't been QA tested or tested at all. And they go, this is the top level opinion on how many paladins should be brought. 1, right? I'm literally going to click over to limit maximums stream right now. And there are 1 evoker, 1 paladin. People at the highest level will come up with their opinions of what is the best and what they should use to min-max, right? But I guess the question that I think we should really be talking about here is, should min-max really matter at the highest level as a game designer? Because min-max is fucking hard to balance around. Because people go, oh, we don't need any mages for Sunwell. The Sunwell buff covers it. We don't need AI. Warlocks do more damage than them. Should we buff mages? What should we do?
Me, bro.
Right? Like, that's the problem that we're having as game designers. You sit there and you go, well, this is what we see the highest level doing. Should we balance around the highest level? It's something that League of Legends has struggled with. It's something that WoW has struggled with. Do you balance around the highest level? Yes or no? Right? And when people say no, they go, well, the highest level is going to clear it in a day, in 2 days, in 3 days, right? The race to world first goes on for a long time. And I mean, the Sepulchre of the first one, that was a fucking long time. I mean, the crab was killing people over and over again. So when people don't balance around the highest level, the eyes that are on the highest level, like here's the thing, right? Is the streams that get 26,000, 30,000 plus viewers are the highest level streams that are pushing the content. And people go, oh, like this is the trickle down you're talking about, Josh. And I totally get that. Where people sit there and they go, oh, we shouldn't bring this type of class, this type of spec to our raid because Limit didn't do it. You know, it makes sense to us. We saw 26,000, 30,000 people watch that happen. But then you get down to the nitty gritty of it and you go, you have to tell your rep paladin you're not going to bring them to hard mode progression here because their damage is a little too low. Ooh, man, that kind of sucks. So yeah, the trickle down does happen. At the same time, though, when it comes to like retail and mechanics that are really hard to balance around the highest level, yeah, it's done to some degree. The percentage, I would say 15%. You should balance around the highest level 15%. The other 85%, you balance around the average player, right? Yeah, balance around the average player. The shitty player, they shouldn't clear the content. Sorry. It's something that they have to struggle with. And that might make them feel
so in regards, so
yeah.
Lord Nudge, I'll get you to bring us home. I've got one last question for Cyrene. So in regards to PTRs and even betas, just any kind of testing that you open to the public, what I'm sort of boiling down to a very generic question, Cyrene, would be like, let's say the next big thing is coming, whether it's the League of Legends MMO or fucking whatever new MMO is around the corner, right? Are you generally on board with, like, it's so weird to say this because I know everyone is, but like massive prolonged beta raid, like end game testing, raid testing, you know, open it up to the players, let them all see it before it actually comes live and let them test it, versus no, we have a great internal team that will test it all and then we'll unleash it as a surprise to the players?
No, if it is a fucking surprise to the players. Wrath of Lich King is not a surprise to the players. That is not a surprise to players.
No, you're right. You're right.
It's
so
not.
I'm in that hypothetical world where a private server doesn't exist.
Yeah. In that world, yeah, release it. Make people struggle. Make them go, oh shit, we shouldn't bring 3 monks and 2 ninjas to this fight. Like, that's a Final Fantasy thing you should have to struggle with. With Wrath of Lich King, this is a game that for all intents and purposes is solved by private servers and by people playing through the game already, right? Private servers, to some degree, will not have the same tuning. But PTR, this is the tuning you see that will make it live.
Yep. No, I agree with you.
In my
I 100%
opinion,
agree.
it's totally fine to do. But when it comes to Final Fantasy, you're like, yeah, surprise us. Show us what that can do. Right?
I agree.
Is this... Because, like, I think I saw this the other day, and I may be wrong. I'm going to quote somebody. This is hearsay of hearsay, so take it with a grain of salt. Somebody said that, like, 5% of the time, maybe even 0% of the time, in WoW rating, things have been nerfed. Almost no time, 0 times, have things been actually buffed that you encountered on live. You went, okay, this boss is too easy. Let's buff it. Almost every time, 95% of the time in WoW history, have things released too strong and you've nerfed it. Instead of, oh, it released too early, released too easy, people killed it, got their loot. Let's buff it. Because people already have the loot from it. And it's going to be easy anyway. So yeah, it's a very hard place to be. But yeah, I personally think that, yeah, if it was something that it was a new content, nobody had ever seen it before, boom, there we go. There's the PTR. Nope, not going to happen. We're going to release this raid, right? We're going to release this on fucking mythic difficulty. Nobody's ever touched it before. I remember watching the Race to World First. People were like, Sylvanas, she dies at like 35%. And they were like, holy shit, she fucking dies at 30%. What the fuck is going on? Like, people were blown, their minds were blown that she died at like a later percentage. That's the shit I love. I love that. But
Absolutely.
Wrath of the Lich King isn't that game. That's not that game. You
Lord-
know when Arthas phases. You know when Mimiron phases, right? You know these things. It's a hard thing to have to balance as somebody on that team.
No, I'm on board. Lord Narge, bring us home, mate. That was, that was the crux that I was getting to there. Zyrene nailed it. Well, I mean, he nailed it because I agree with him, but like, are you of the same opinion or do you disagree? I'm like, if it's new content, don't show your hand. But, with Wrath, I don't care as much. But how do you feel about PTRs with MMOs?
So when I think of a PTR, like you said, I think of a beta, right? Like that's what I think of. I don't have anything against betas. I mean, listen, if I'm running a company and I have a massive pool of people who are willing to, like you said, do the heavy lifting for free, of course I'm going to use it. But I will just
let me center it. Let me center it more to like end game rating as opposed to like I'm releasing a new game. Here's the open world. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I mean, for end game rating, I don't mind maybe because it doesn't personally affect me like it kind of does Zyrene. But on the flip side, right? Okay, let's say that the bottom 30% of players don't even bother with PTR, right? Because they don't care, right? They're gonna get the game. They're on hardcore or 40, 50%, whatever you want to call it.
I would say
right?
the bottom 90%, but yeah.
95
fine.
plus.
Whatever. So 5% go in, right? Which is still law of large numbers, a huge group of players, right? That are gonna find a huge group of bugs, in my opinion. Like they're gonna find so much stuff, and those people are gonna come out and make this game better for 95, like you said, everyone who didn't go, right? And then also, like once again, it matters to Zyrene and the top players because it sucks that you personally are competing to be the best or one of the best, right? So you've got guys who've been doing this for 20 years and that sucks. I sympathize. It's like going to play CS:GO for the first time. Like these guys have been playing for 100 years. They're basically bots, right? So I get it, but this doesn't affect most people. They don't care. You're the bet. Like I'm not gonna go into my raid and be like, oh no, like I didn't do as well as Team Liquid. Like the best are gonna be the best, regardless of whether there's a PTR or not. To be honest, because that's who's gonna be playing the shit out of the game. So I don't care that they get the practice in the PTR and then essentially rebeat it, unfairly, if you want to say, because they're their own league of people, and quite frankly, they're
So-
1% of players. So yeah.
Oh, I just want to ask the question for like the benefit of Blizzard, etc. Do you think it's advantageous for Blizzard to hire a 0.01% player to be on their QA team?
No, because like you said, the game is too big, okay, and that player can play 1 million hours as opposed to 1 million players playing 1 hour. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And like you said it, listen, I play League 2, clearly not at whatever level you're playing it at. And it is freaking complex, right? You could have played that character, right, in an abundance of ways. And then one dude in buttfuck nowhere decides to buy a stupid item that you would never even think of buying because it doesn't make sense. And for whatever reason, it works because of some scaling that you never thought of. And it happens all the time, right? Like APE back in the day. It just happens where shit that doesn't make sense because you have 10 million players, 100 million players playing that game. You're going to have 100 million players playing that game for 1 minute apiece. And that already blew apart everything you ever did in your whole life. And WoW is the same thing in the sense that it is a massive game where you're gonna have so many players doing so much. And I mean, listen, we all see these videos from Asia of like the crazy shit that they break, right? Or that they take advantage of, or that they find. And that's just that Q&A player is never gonna find that. Or maybe he does find one of 1,000. And then was it really worth it? Was it really worth the salary? Not really. So what do? You do PDR. And you make us do it for you. And Josh, I wouldn't call it heavy lifting. You know why? Because we're all going in there with a big old smile on our face. We're all like, really. I mean, maybe the most hardcore guilds think of it as a job. Like, hey, we have to be in there because we have to be the best. But you know what? We went into PTR to check it out.
my guild, we had a good time. Like, and like no one's being forced into PTR. And the only people that are being forced into PTR are those that force themselves because they're the best. But by definition, that's why you're the best. LeBron James doesn't fucking complain about having to go to the gym. You know what I mean?
No, he just complains
So
about
like
everything else.
he just complains about getting everything else.
If I can jump in,
You get my so ultimately I agree with Irene here.
yeah.
Like I agree with
Well,
Irene. It's kind of
I
think that-
disagree with your take. Well, one sec, North. Just one sec. Actually, no. Fuck it. You go North, and I'll jump in.
I think that there's an important distinction to make here because I think for the vast majority, and my chat was pointing this out, when you were talking, Zyrene, they were like, based, giga true. And like, you're not wrong. When the content is solved, when it is the same, that makes sense. This version of Ulduar was not that. That's why when people went in, they did not smash everything that was there. People legitimately had progression. Yes, there were bugs and you have to squash them, right? But under the circumstance that Josh gave, under the hypothetical that was given, 100% this would be better if we could have a little bit of new magic sprinkled into it because this is a new version that we have never seen. No one ever saw this because XT was nerfed on day one.
hardly different though, right?
No,
Like,
it's not hardly
hardly
different.
different.
It's not hardly different because people were not spending guilds that have private servered for years, right? We're not spending hours on bosses that they've seen 100, 500 times before. This was different and it was very cool and novel. And I'm glad that we got to experience it. I'm really glad they implemented this. It is an awesome version of Ulduar. It's not, completely 180 by any means, but it's a really cool version of Ulduar. That Algalon's the hardest Algalon that I have ever seen on any server ever. And that's really cool and special. And if in an ideal world, if that's the hypothetical, could we get that magic? Could we have that magic where we walk in and you fucking start to tank Algalon, you just get you get absolutely goddamn reamed, right? That is magical because then you have those solutions. It is the thing like Sylvanas where well, wait, if I can finish this, right? It's the thing, right, where you think that everything's going to go to plan because, right, you've seen Sylvanas and other difficulties, right? And you're gonna have your Venthyr boomkins because they do shit tons of damage when they're standing still. But you know why Limit lost that race? Because of those Venthyr boomkins, because they did not predict it accurately. Even though they thought that they knew how it would go, they could not get out of that, and they didn't have the characters prepared. And at the very cutting edge, they still had that magic because it did not work in the way that they wanted it to because they made a bad prediction. They were not as good as they could have been, and they failed as a result of it. And that's really cool. That's the magic of new content in that way. And I think that is so compelling. And to just completely ignore it, throw it out the window, be like, no, this is not for BWL, for Naxxramas, for Molten Core. Sure, fuck them. They're known. We know them. They're known fucking articles. But this was an exception, and it was a brief and ephemeral little nugget of something so new and so special. And if you could have had it, I don't blame Blizzard for what they did. They needed to do this. But if you could, what a magical, what a wonderful thought.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, of course, but that's not ideal, right? Like if they didn't have to test PTR because the game was quote unquote, perfect, then like yeah, of course you don't need it. But you do need it. And that's why we're here. But I do agree with both you and Josh. Like in the perfect world, if you don't need a PTR and betas don't exist because games come out and they're just dope, like fuck yeah, right? But that's
even if they're not just dope, if you have a dedicated support staff, because that's important to your company, because rather than have the absolute most money possible, you realize that what you want to do is make good games, and that's how Blizzard was founded, and that's how they existed before. The customer support staff was insanely good, right? And you had this commitment to making sure that even if it wasn't right on day one, that they would make it right, and they still try and do that with retail. They don't always succeed, right? They have that hand in there. They're willing to fix it, and they're willing to fix it now because they care about the game. And I wish they were given more resources, because there are brilliant people who work on this fucking game who are disparaged left and fucking right for making the wrong decisions when they don't do that. They are doing the best with what they are given. Maybe they're not the absolute fucking God's gift to it every goddamn moment, but I believe that they would be if they were given as much resources as they could use in these situations.
On that, on that, let me jump in. I'll throw it to Zyrene in 1 second. Then, Mike, you're up next at bat when we jump into the Ulduar stuff, which is about 3 seconds away. All right, let me just comment on what you've said, North. I think one of the greater things that I've seen about the Classic player base over the years is a generally good grasp and understanding of the lack of resources that the Classic team has had on hand. Like, there's been a very, very good finger on the pulse, even though none of us fucking work there, of the realities of, look, we're quite sure there's a team of good people like making the most of what they've got. when decisions are made at a level above them that seriously hamstring their capabilities, but they do the best with what they've got. And I've always really appreciated the player base when I jump in subreddits and forums of repeatedly mentioning that and being generally aware, troll comments aside from the fuckwits, that, like, you know, there are very smart people trying to do their best with what they've got. So I just wanted to say that. On top of that, Zyrene, I wanted to just add a flavor to a comment, a question that you asked Lord Narge about, you know, whether you would want someone in the top 0.1% working on a QA team for a game. I disagree with Lord Narge's answer. He said no, I say yes, but mine comes with a caveat where I'm like, yes, I would want, you know, the fucking bee's knees of players, the top tier players working in QA, only if, and this might be a relatively hard quality to come by, they are absolutely capable of walking a mile in the casual shoes and disassociating themselves from their own personal drives in the game, which obviously is part of the hiring process. A gaming company has to weed out the fuckwits who just want to get in a game and buff their own class and do everything to fucking, you know, make themselves better. As long as they can display some form of ability to be universally aware of what's good for the overall health of the game and realize the kind of players that make up the bulk of the player base, then yeah, fuck it, put the best of the best in. Is that kind of like, what were you getting? I was just wondering where you're going with that one.
You're muted.
Oh, Zyrene, you there? You're muted.
He's muted.
Can you hear me, mate?
Yeah.
Zyrene,
no,
you muted. You muted.
Yeah, sorry. You were wondering where I was going with it?
Yeah,
Or-
sorry. I was just wondering, like, when you asked that question, do you believe that absolutely QA should be stocked with the best of the best, or like, is that what you meant?
Not stocked. You should obviously have the normal player experience available, but it gets me to the point where I go, like, you know, I look at North and he said like they should be getting reamed. I'm like, who should be getting reamed? Is it the top 1%, or is it the average player should be getting reamed by these bosses, right?
For the optional,
Two
right?
different things. I think
that even, right? I think that there can be room for both, right? I think that obviously, you know, like those encounters are going to do that. But if we had seen, right, a Yogg Zero Light progression, right, like when people had to like look at Freya, if those things could be as crisp as possible, if people didn't know what to expect going into Algalon, and they have to make those dynamic decisions where they're like, well, what do we swap? What do we use? What is good?
So
What is
hard.
bad?
Yeah, it's
I
so
think
hard.
that is such an interesting thing to watch and look at. And I don't lament at all. And I said this earlier, I do not bemoan or you know, like cry out in agony because this is not happening. I understand the practical limitations of it, and it's not so different that, you know, like we're you know, like the light is being ripped from our eyes. But how cool would it be? How cool would it be if we could do it? How cool would that be? That would be very cool, and I would really enjoy that, and I think that'd be dope as fuck.
Very good.
But is your version of cool like something that everybody agrees with in the majority?
I don't think that every game needs to be catered always to the majority, right? And I don't think everything needs to always be catered to, okay, this is the way that needs to look in every single situation. And so I get why Blizzard values crispness for their players over, right, the experience being necessarily novel for the very top percent, because it's only going to be novel for those top players. And dedicating your resources to that in mass to do that, that's a ridiculous thing to do unless you have, you know, like, unless you're in a hypothetical that is silly, which this one kind of is, right? But I want to answer it honestly, and I do honestly believe that if we were in that situation, I would like that magic back, because normally that's only important with new content, and so that's why I'm always like, hey, you know, like we need a fresh that's not just another WoW,
fresh, yeah.
right? Like another really new.
You want classic plus. You want plus.
Of course I do.
You want plus.
Of course I do.
Yeah.
I want Season of Mastery, but with the world bosses having crazy boomkin loot and shit. You know, I'm a psycho, right?
You want the adjusted for the modern audience version of the game. You don't want a game that was for 15 years ago people. No,
not by any stretch of the imagination.
I understand that. Like, this is a story I don't tell a lot of people, but back when I was on QA and like I talked about, I was the lead playtester for Rek'Sai. You guys in the audience may not know this, but the Rek'Sai is a champion that when they burrow and unburrow, it's the W on the kit for League of Legends. When they're burrowed, the Q is a 1600 unit range projectile. that when it hits the target, it just reveals them, right? And when you're burrowed in the ground, you don't see much. It's a thing that's supposed to allow you to see the person. But back in QA playtesting, it slowed people as well. It was the 1600 unit range slow. And I remember having this conversation with the designer. I was like, it doesn't need to slow. Your E is already a gap closer. You can get to them. You can fuck them up really easily if you play the early game really aggressively. And I was sick for like 3 days. And when I came back to the champion, somebody else had play tested it. And I was like, wait, when I came back, I was like, why is the slow back on the queue? I fought for like 2.5 weeks to get this removed. When it came back, I sat there and I was like, this is so easy again. Does the average player need the slow to actually make it so that it can reach the character? And the answer was yes. The average player needed that. And my answer was no. Just be more fucking aggressive. Be a better player. And so when we balanced it and removed that from the queue, when Rek'Sai released, there were 2 threads on the subreddit of League of Legends. And one was Rek'Sai is overpowered, and the other one was what? Rek'Sai was underpowered.
Yep.
Yeah, they thought she was fucking garbage. And the other people thought she was so broken because she could see everybody while she was in stealth or she was underground. She could see them with pulses. And I was sitting there going, did I make a good decision or a bad decision? I balanced her around the top percentage. And you know what happened? She was fucking meta in pro play for 6 months. It was insane. They literally had to rework that champion entirely. They had to balance it around the top level because I was the person who fucking played it. And that for me, when I sat there and looked at it in retrospect, I was sat there and I went, I think I made the right decision to balance it around me. And I actually should have gone harder. Because what's going to happen in Ulduar is if they balance it around the top players, it's going to get cleared in 2 days. Blackwing Lair is cleared in fucking 37 minutes, 40 minutes. And you sit there and you go, wow, this content's really easy. Let's fucking not play this game. When you go and you play League of Legends, you're like, wow, this character is really good. It's fucking balanced around the top level. 3 months later, you go, oh, wow, this character actually, it's really good at the top level because I've mastered it. This is a little bit of a secret. If you release a character overpowered in a video game, people play it, they learn the pattern, and then you can nerf it. If a thing releases fucking weak as shit, people don't care. They don't play it. They don't learn the pattern. They don't fight the boss. It's too easy. And then if you buff it, they complain more. People complain more when something gets buffed when it was underpowered when it was released than if it was overpowered and gets nerfed. This is actually statistical fact. If you release something like Ivern,
it's negativity bias, man.
yeah, 100%. You're absolutely right. If something releases overpowered and you nerf it, people go, oh, thank God it got nerfed. And the people who played it go, I'll still play it. I know how to play it. I put the time in. When things get released and they're fucking weak, people are like, it's not worth my time to learn. Don't want to put time into it, right? People who play are like, oh, I'm a diehard fan of this thing. It gets buffed. They go like, there's less people who play it because they were diehard fans and it got buffed than people who would have played it if it was buffed and got nerfed. This is a video game stat. This is a fucking thing from the side of QA that is an absolute fact. People will play things more if it is overpowered and gets nerfed than underpowered and gets buffed. 100%. 100%.
Right. Let me jump in, guys. That was a phenomenal fucking tangent. Thank you so much for going with me down the rabbit hole of PTRs and QA and betas and all that shit. That was fucking awesome. I guess we should probably, after almost 2 hours, talk about Ulduar. I did the classic thing.
We
Yeah,
haven't talked about Ulduar yet?
I know. I did the
Fucking 1
classic.
a.m. here.
I did the classic Josh move of like not talking about the fucking thing for 2 hours. Hey, look, what would you say, Lord Nudge? It's 1 a.m. already.
Fucking 1 a.m.
I'm
Can we
so
please talk
sorry.
about Ulduar, dude?
I'm so sorry. Here we go. All right, look, Mike, let me throw it to you, and then Lord Nudge, then Nogs, and then we'll get the others in there. Mike, look, I don't think I'm going to mention much about Flame Leviathan, Ignis, Razor Scale. I mean, we were talking yesterday, and you sort of, I mean, the other guys can disagree if they want. You sort of said those three, maybe not the most notable of bosses, not too much crazy shit on the PTR going on. You know, things really get spicy when we get to XT. So, do you think that's a good place to kick off, Mike?
Yeah, I think XT is a good place to kick off for the discussion.
All right, so obviously we had, Willie came out with a great video the other day. Everyone's talking about this, the DPS check that is XT that we're getting on the PTR. It was put out there that the math dictates somewhat that every player in your fucking raid, or the DPS, better be doing 8k DPS each, or else you might be up shit creek. Talk to me about DPS checks and how you feel about this particular one, Mike.
I think DPS checks are important because it because healers and tanks already have this very key pivotal role that everyone touts and how important they are, but DPS is important too, and with a DPS check like this, every single DPS in your raid needs to be pumping out as much as they can the entire fight. Otherwise, you're probably not going to be able to kill the boss. And it's definitely going to be for the average guild. It could be a lot of rubber hits the road and people that aren't up to snuff with the DPS. I could see a lot of people getting benched quite a bit with DPS checks like XT, Hodir. Name a boss that has a hard mode that. Basically, I think for a lot of average guilds, it'll be good and bad in a way. So I think DPS checks are important.
Nogs, how'd you feel? Did you play the PTR or did you watch? How'd you feel about XT with this version?
Yeah, so I did XT hard on 10, but I didn't get to do it on 25. I was with a dad guild from Benediction, and we basically just cleared it all on normal. Didn't have a chance to see it, but I do have a little rant that if I could go on, it involves XT.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, so basically I was talking to Mike 6 months ago about this, and we were worried about the difficulty from Nax to Ulduar, and we wanted to make sure that they buffed Nax enough so that these players wouldn't have such a difficulty in jump. It didn't end up happening, unfortunately. People blitzed through Nax. The only real struggle was Immortal, and that was just, the few players letting down the rest of the team. But when I got into Ulduar, I started to notice a lot more personal responsibility that can't be covered with eye level, especially on XT, with the different, what do they call it? I believe they're called bombs that you've got to take out.
Yeah.
Our PTR guild could not do it without a weak aura.
All right. Where are we? Lord Narge, mate. Keep us going.
that-
Are we talking
that-
about
that's a
hard mode
good point.
specifically, or
That's
are
a
we
good point.
talking?
Sorry, say that again,
Are we
Lord
talking
Narge.
hard mode? Are we talking hard mode specifically?
I think we'll focus on the hard modes from here because I mean, look, my impression,
yeah, 'cause-
Mike was sort of like the easy modes. Everyone's going to be able to. The normal modes, everyone's going to be able to do it. So
pretty
yeah,
much. Yeah, I don't. I saw. I didn't do XT on hard mode this time around. I saw I understand what's happening, and I saw all the videos and all that. I don't think I'm against it, and the only reason I don't think I'm against it yet is because I haven't tried it. Maybe I'm gonna bang my head a little bit and feel worse later. But the way the normals went, I'm kind of happy that there's, let's call it, like kind of a wrench this early in the raid. And the reason I say that is because from what I understand, right now it's probably one of the top like 4 or 5 hardest fights, right, in hard mode, because of this specific one kind of silly thing, because it's not so much a mechanic as it is, like you said, like a crazy DPS check on the heart. Nog, you said your guys were having a lot of trouble without weak auras for the gravity and light wells.
Yeah, most definitely.
Damn.
Which is funny because that's also just a part of the normal mode as well. So
That's why I asked the question, because I was like, that's kind of like, I know they hit a lot harder and they kind of tick faster, and like gravity well blows up faster, I think, as well. Like, it not blows up, it sucks in, whatever you want to call it. But that to me shouldn't be a problem, right? That's like a be a gamer moment, right? Like, it gives you a big debuff even without the weak aura, right? Like, it's the well, once again, I don't know what everyone's UIs look like, but it gives you a big debuff that you should be able to notice if you're rating hard modes. You can probably, right, you're probably used to seeing where important debuffs are, etc. So I don't think that's so much the issue. But long story short, and I don't want to pine too much on a fight that I hadn't done yet, is I don't mind a DPS check, and I also don't mind that it's this early and that it's this difficult, because I think it gives a little bit of excitement, right? You kind of blow through Flame Leviathan, Ignis, and Razor Scale. It would be kind of lame to just blow through the whole fucking courtyard, right, on hard mode every single time. Did it have to be XT and a DPS check? I kind of preferred, I guess, that it was a mechanic that was difficult as opposed to a DPS check, because one is kind of just rotation, I guess, maybe a little gear dependent. Whereas if it was just a difficult mechanic, you'd have to actually learn, right? But I don't know. I didn't mind it, and it also didn't seem too difficult. Like a lot of people right now are doing, 3 Drake Sarth burn strat, which definitely I think is a higher DPS check, right? I mean, if everyone has to do 8k damage or more, I mean, I think you need like 10 or 9, maybe less. But point is, when I hear that DPS check, I don't hear, holy shit, dude, now I gotta do like 5 weeks of normal Ulduar to get past this boss more. It doesn't sound like that, which I'm happy about, because no one wants just a straight up DPS check, right? But it didn't seem like it was too bad to me.
Well, okay, so the thing is with this, Lord Nod, just to preface, it's the heart, and this is for 25 man specifically. The heart has an absolute shit ton of health. You have to DPS, you have a DPS check for that. But then when the hard mode starts for XT, he has 56 million health, and you have to deal with all the mechanics, and he has a shorter enrage timer. So so everyone has to be doing like this certain amount of DPS while dealing with all of these mechanics. It's not that
aren't a lot of people tanking him in the corner, so you're kind of like not getting 2 whole stacks of shit kind of thing, right? I mean, that kind of makes it a little easier, especially if you got a bunch of locks blowing that shit up.
Sure, and I mean, obviously people will find ways to cheese those sort of things, but
I'm not trying to backseat drive, but to me, it doesn't look like a oh my god kind of thing. Like I genuinely think my guild is killing that thing week 1 or 2, and once again we're good, but we're not great. And what maybe top 50 server, maybe, or top 20 on Horde server. I don't know.
I think it'll be a lot of wipes for a lot of guilds on XT hard, but the way his current health pool is
100%, but that's okay, right?
No, it's not okay. There's only 5 pieces of loot, and they're not even better than things later in the instance. Like XT hard mode is so fucking hard.
Yeah, people like it. It's like we didn't even try it because like our understanding was that it was really fucking hard. That it was like one of like top two, and it is terrible.
There's
top
like
two,
a
the loot is terrible.
There's like a Holy Paladin piece of loot. Nobody fucking cares about Holy Paladin loot.
Wait, you think it's harder than Algalon and like Zero Light Yogg?
Yes, XT is fucking insane right now.
Oh goddamn! Wait. I didn't realize that. I was hearing top 5.
Did anybody kill XT hard mode on PTR even?
I do not think so.
I didn't hear about it.
No, but they also didn't want to waste their time, right? And that's the weird thing about it being difficult where it is. It's because A, none of the loot on that matters, and B, you don't need it to kill Algalon. You don't need it to do anything. You just want to go into the hard modes and go get Death's Demise. You don't want to waste your time hitting the baby robot.
To answer your question, Zyrene Agrend is saying no one killed XT hard mode on PTR.
No one killed XT hard mode? Holy shit.
Jesus.
I guess I watched some attempts because I was looking and I was like, okay, we'll get there in a couple weeks. But that
version of that fight has never been killed. That version has never been killed. And it's potentially an easier version of the actual...
Wait.
Yeah,
has it never been killed because it was an early version, or is it a combination of 2 different versions?
Early versions, and it was not possible to be. It's not even the fully hardest version of it. Apparently, based on the post that I saw that Agron responded to, apparently Tantrum and Gravity Bombs could go out simultaneously, and so that means that it's even more fucking ridiculous.
Ignore
right? So
that everything I said
is hard beyond belief. Agron up the item level.
He's Agrend. It pains me to say this. It pains me to say this, but Agrend is saying that North is correct. That version was never killed on live. That is the day 1 version.
But
everything I said.
I think that what North said, and I think that everybody's like, I'm totally open to forgiveness and shit like that. Like, I totally think that you're right. Where it's like, forget everything I said. I didn't even listen to it in the first place. But well, when it comes to what North is saying, where he's just like, up the item level, I'm like, no, just nerf the boss.
I'm joking, Zyrene.
But I think it's to some degree the sincerity in which that is said. It's like like up the item level. It's like, no. Some people will think that, but it's like, no, don't up the item level of the boss. Nerf it to be in line with the other hard modes that are before it.
Don't up the item
Nerf
level.
it to be a little
100%.
bit easier than Iron Council. That's all that really is required, right? Because the eye level of those items and the items that drop, I'm sitting there going like, dude, there's just a fucking personal anecdote. There's an H-Pal in my raid, Commence, shout out Commence. Every time a fucking item drops in our raid, everybody goes, and he goes, yay! We're just like, the fucking Holy Paladin likes a piece of loot. It's fucking garbage. Like, Noth dies, there's no Angry Dread. Nobody cares about the DPS items. He's like, that's my biz. Every time Commence says, oh, that's sick, everybody knows shit loot dropped. Because the H-Pal likes it. That's what matters. So when HT...
So why can't we... For a moment, why can't we keep that the way that... Like, because that's the way that it was. It is killable. It is for sure killable. It's hard. It's optional. People don't feel the need to do it because it's not required. That's kind of cool. It's a real challenge.
It is killable when all the loot from him is no longer relevant.
For sure, but the new loot on him's never been relevant. It's not good. It doesn't matter. So why don't we let the cool, fun, and the crazy thing exist? Because you don't need it for anything else.
So I guess to say what I'm saying, there is in a modern video game updated for like Wrath of the Lich King Classic, you cannot just have a stick. There has to be a carrot on the end of the stick to lure players into killing the boss the way that you want them to kill it. XT hard mode, there is not enough of a fucking juicy carrot at the end of that stick to lure us into killing it that way. We'll just fucking stick it every time. We'll fucking slap the shit out of XT every week. Fuck our Holy Paladin. He can heal me through Yogg at 0 every week. I don't need to kill it that way, right? What is the juicy carrot? What is the thing that's going to have the crunch for me to kill XT? And you can't make enough of a crunch on XT to make it worth it for me because the loot on him is not good enough. Versus the loot.
Does everything have to be so sterile though? Is always this needs to be prescribed this way? Like, no, it doesn't need to be that way at all. It can be fun and cool and wacky and weird and not make full sense because that's based.
Hold on. We're talking. But it can't be that hard though.
Everybody
that hard.
Most people in this call are talking about the 99%. I'm talking about the 1%, right? Or the 0.01%.
0.1%, yeah.
No, North, you're talking about the 0.01 of the 0.01%. You're talking about the mage in the fucking corner jerking off how hard Nax can be for him. Like, it's actually a sub fucking target of a sub-target audience.
Sure.
Going,
in the same way, that you shouldn't
hard.
balance, in the same way that you shouldn't balance around, right? Like you shouldn't balance necessarily around the speedrunners who are running however many DKs, however many this and that, because people new metas can come and evolve and be interesting. But if this boss truly, if it really, and you and I agree on this, it really doesn't matter. Yes, it's not in line with the other bosses. It's weird. It's wacky. It was nerfed because it wasn't in line with the other bosses. And I don't disagree with that kind of approach because people want it to be approachable. But then that legitimately makes then the achievement in that, right? He becomes the final wall, not the wall for gear, not the wall for the best things or the title or anything else. He becomes the wall for the mount, and it's not even that cool of a mount.
Do you think that XT hard mode should be the front page of Warcraft logs for number 1, 2, and 3?
No, I don't.
Then why the fuck would I?
But it's not. But it's not. But because not everything needs to be tailored to exactly your taste and what should be approachable. It doesn't need to be that sterile. It can be weird and wacky, and maybe it's too weird and wacky. Maybe there's a call for that. But can XT be the second hardest boss in the instance? Is that allowable when literally it's not actually dating all the players?
I'm gonna hyperbolize your fucking argument and say I killed KT with 24 ret paladins and a prop paladin in my raid. We did it. We did a full paladin raid, boys. There's so many fucking paladins in this raid. They healed me the entire time. Like, that's awesome, dude. That's awesome.
All dwarf guild. Like you don't love the all dwarf guild, dude. Wait, let's get that out in the open right now.
You're talking about the Grob guild, dude.
You don't like the all dwarf guild because they're the most base guild that's ever existed in the history of World of Warcraft.
I do like the all.
I'm sure Agron's on my side, so we're getting your account back tonight.
I do like the all dwarf guild, dude. When they RP walked out of
Grob mob.
Yeah.
That fucking
Yeah.
that
because
guild had
because
so-
and
Oh.
that is the essence of weird and wacky shit that doesn't make full sense because you and I, because right, a million players might have an interaction with this boss, and maybe you know what I remember from XT002 hard mode? I remember this from when I was like, I mean, it was 11 years old. Right, and my guild, we attempting it for days and days and days. Not this version, right? But maybe effectively it was this version because of how terrible we were back then, with so little add-ons and terrible keybinds and all this shit. Bad, like bad fucking understandings of our class, etc. And I killed that boss the last 15 seconds, evasion tanking it to death, and I eviscerated it in the last second before it fucking killed me, before the evasion ran off and all the marbles would drop, and I fucking killed it. And the screams that came from that. And so if that can give that moment, if it really doesn't matter, if the min-maxers aren't going to be pissed, if they can skip it, if you can give that moment, because you don't always know what's going to be, it's hard to fabricate those things. Why can't we just bet a little bit, maybe when it doesn't matter? Right, maybe when it's just Holy Paladin. Why can't we bet a little on things that are crazy and fun?
Let me jump in. Let me jump in here, guys.
Yeah,
this
yeah.
is fucking fantastic.
Do you know about them? Do you know about the Dwarven Overlords?
Of course, I was a Grob
I'll say,
mobber.
can I say
No,
something?
no, no, not you, Josh.
wait. So do I know the Dwarf Guild?
Yeah,
I think I saw something.
dude, they literally cannot play they got to play priest. They can't play druid.
Right.
They can't
yeah.
play mage. They have 0 D curses in their raid.
That's
They have
wild.
no shamans.
It's wild. Mike,
It's
Wait, how do they
fucking
kill?
insane.
How do they kill Noth?
Wait, how do they do Noths? Yeah,
Oh,
how do they do
God,
Noths?
yeah.
We got a
Maybe
moist talent
potions?
that shit.
Potions? Yeah,
Oh my
let's
God.
fucking go.
Mike, saddle up, jump in.
I just want to say the fact that we had a Gren here to tell us that no one on the PTR killed XT hard mode is wild to me. And yeah, I think like seeing those numbers again, and I saw people attempting it on the PTR. And
They also spent
I
less time
think
because it wasn't necessary for the race,
Yeah.
right?
True, yeah. So
and
there
shit
could be
was crashing us.
That's true.
Yeah,
the
that
heart
too.
was
Also,
crashing.
killing the heart was crashing. So there could be that bias there, the fact that guilds were like, fuck XT, we want to, these top guilds that are in the PTR want to test for getting Death's Demise. So there obviously is a bias there, but
You're right.
but I think the fact that that they didn't even try to kill XT hard mode, on the PTR, and he has these numbers, I think it's going to be a fucking ass reaming for 95% of guilds when they go try to do it. Then
Yeah, but
No,
they're
they
just gonna skip
they
it.
won't even
They're just
try,
gonna
but they
skip
won't even
it.
try week one.
Exactly.
So
They're
it's
just
never
gonna
going to be
skip
that
it.
difficult. It's never even going to be that difficult. And if you let it be less difficult, right? Like if you let it be less difficult, and then they have to do it because of the way that Warcraft logs have tuned it, they might want those points. And so if they want those points, if it's easy enough to get the points, they might then do that. And then their gear is better slightly. It's not really that much better, but it's better. And so then the rest of the encounters are also easier on some level, right? So you're bringing that in line as well. And so there are a lot of interesting and weird dynamics. There's too many things to think of realistically to know for sure, okay, this is the wrong or this is the right decision, because no one is ever going to even attempt that with the gear that we have, right?
So just an aside, like Agrin is saying, Kill Shot and Frost Trap were crashing people, but as somebody who was in a race with another guild for Death's Demise, yeah, you didn't encounter the XD hard mode in the first day. You're not going to risk it. It's not part of the achievement, right? It's the same thing as like when Blizzard had to change the Death's Demise achievement to include Steelbreaker as the last one. Everybody would have been like, let's kill the Runebreaker as the last person. Fuck Steelbreaker. Like, that's something that Blizzard did to update it, right? Because you didn't have to kill Iron Council on the hardest difficulty. You had to kill on medium to hard difficulty to actually get the rune, to actually unlock Algalon to go ahead and like move on to the next part. So I do think they've done a good job there, but at the same time, I think that XT, like you're talking about right now, North, this version of XT is something that I personally think, I have no information on this, nothing like that. I think they will nerf it. I think it will be nerfed. It is too hard for the loot that it gives. I personally think it will be nerfed.
And I think I've gotten the root of the problem here. I think I understand what's going on. I think you're afraid of the baby robot, Cyrene. Is that true?
The baby robot? What's the baby robot?
He throws tantrums, Cyrene. Are you even familiar with the goddamn boss?
I am
Yeah, he
familiar
has a
with the
baby
goddamn
voice.
bot.
Do you not have your game sound on?
I do. You know what? The game sound, dude. Have you ever killed Ariara? Oh, what is it? Ariara? Oriana.
My
Oriana.
guild is the best guild at killing the cat lady. I
Dude.
will.
When you have
go
her
to
game
cat
sound
like
on, she sounds so fucking shrill. Oh my
that.
god.
The screech is famous.
Dude, everybody is just like mute your game sound.
Here, jump in, answer
should
this
like-
one, Zareen, answer this one from a grand. He says, I
All right.
can't speculate on if it'll be nerfed right now,
It-
but are you
it'll be
glad
nerfed.
or
That's my
not?
hand.
Are you glad or not that we put the hardest version out there just to see how it goes?
I'm happy about it. I'm happy. I mean, I'm happy that they put the hardest version out. I think this is awesome. And look at what kind of conversation it spurred. I mean, it doesn't sound like North is upset about it. Siren's a little upset about it. It doesn't sound like Mike's upset
he's
about
afraid
it.
of robots, right? So we
It's
can't
okay,
really, we
you
kind of
know
have to
what?
discount
It's all
his
right. He sounds like
opinion.
he's afraid of baby
I have an
robots. It's all right.
idea.
Hit us, Mike.
A grand make Death's Demise achievement require killing XT hard mode.
See, that would be a little ridiculous though, because then
It's gonna be
then
3
you would
weeks.
that would be a little ridiculous, because then you would actually have guilds walled there, and it would be like, oh well, did you get good loot off Flame Leviathan? Okay, great, right? Like, and that feels bad. That feels shitty.
It's all right. He's already said hard pass.
Ah, boo.
All right, let's move on, guys. Let's move on.
Can we
I
put
think
QT
everyone
emotes in the Discord?
turned
We
against
can,
you
right?
instantly.
Yeah.
Boys,
Hey, that was just my evil idea. Come on, North. I was trying to be based.
let's get to Iron
I
Council.
appreciate it, I appreciate
Let's
it.
get to Iron Council. Put Iron Council in your mind. Now, look, I knew fucking nothing about this boss. Mike, in talking to me yesterday, was like, this was the surprise. Well, maybe slightly surprising. Massive wall the guilds were hitting on the PTR. It was incredibly unforgiving for maybe, like tank healers. Steelbreaker was such a ridiculously large issue. Tell me, Lord Narge, I'll get you to kick us off. Mate, from playing, from watching, like, what's the go with Iron Council creeping up on everyone?
The go or the goal?
So what's the go? Like, what are your thoughts on it?
I think first off, I think the fight is awesome. I love the fact that I love the fact that you can kind of play around with who you're killing first and the order. And I also like the fact that you can kind of decide what your hard mode is, in the sense of what you're leaving up and how you're doing the boss fight.
No. Sorry. I don't mean to interrupt, but I do. Hard mode is killing Steelbreaker. You cannot fuck around with that anymore.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Well, yeah,
Okay,
but then
fine.
now there's a medium mode, and the medium rare mode is bringing Rep Paladin, right? So
Okay.
Medium rare mode.
Yeah, I ordered the medium
Oh,
rare.
Paladin.
So actually, that
sorry.
Zyree,
Shit.
do
that
you
was a
still
really
get the
good
better?
answer. Please do it.
I want mine bleeding
do
a
you still
little.
get- Do you
Go,
still
go,
get
go.
the better loot if you kill Rune Master last? Just not the
different.
achievement.
It's different loot. It's
I think it's
different
different
loot.
loot
It's always
tables,
different
right?
loot. Sometimes you
Yeah.
have to. Sometimes you want to kill Molkheim last because it's different loot.
Yeah. Okay. So all right. So yeah. All right. That's fine.
I'd like one medium rare Iron Council, please, for my
I
loot.
literally, I want North to just have the rest of this conversation. That was so good. That was so good.
No. I think, but that goes back to the conversation, and we could have this for hours. So I will not belabor this. Ulduar is the best instance. Why? Because the hard modes are immersive, right? It's not okay, I've right-clicked the difficulty, I have put it on heroic mode, now there are more mechanics and the boss hits harder. No, you push the fucking button.
Yeah, you choose
leave up Freya's allies. You fucking you get to Thor him early, right? Hodier's
I
part. But
tank-
like, you kill
I
the
tank-
heart,
Whoa,
right? Like,
man, I love this part where I tank General Verax for 6 minutes before he activates his hard mode. Like, General Verax, dude.
VZAX sucks. VZAX does suck. I'll admit that. But we could just—he's not part of the instance, right? He's a psyop. Okay, like we just
Okay.
we can
We'll
ignore
exclude
him.
We'll,
right?
we'll exclude him.
He's a
Okay.
hallucination brought
All
on
right.
by Yogg Saron, right? Like he's
Fever
not
dream.
real.
Yeah. Okay.
Exactly.
Okay.
Let me jump in. Nogs, mate, what are you doing? It's the bizarre, like bizarro world where the Australian is the polite one. Mate, sorry, I don't mean to be cheeky. You fucking say as little or as much as you want. But do you have thoughts on Iron Council?
Yeah, no, I just remember doing it on PTR and it just slapped our tanks something fierce. And yeah, there was enough going on where you could snapshot your abilities inside the ruin. And there's some really cool, intricate things that classes can do to kind of benefit damage.
Well, can I ask a weird question?
What order did you do it in?
He did
I
Silver
believe-
last. Yeah.
Yeah, I believe it was Steelbreaker. No, Dwarf died first.
Yeah.
Then Medium, and then Giant was last.
So you were doing a hard mode.
That's
We
hard
attempted
mode.
to. I was
Yeah.
with dad guilds on the PTR, so I didn't quite get to where I wanted to be. But
NR helps a lot on that. If your tank's a leatherworker, that actually helps a lot because the fusion punch can be resisted by like a bunch. Just as an aside, that can help a lot. If you have
what does Leatherworker do?
leatherworking gets? You didn't know this? Aren't you? Excuse me, aren't you hardcore, Cyrene? Leatherworking
Yes,
gets better
I-
NR chance.
But keep going.
You get better NR chance as leatherworker, don't you?
Oh, you're
That's a
telling me to
mechanic.
wear NR for that boss.
You can.
That
That
I've
is
already
some
killed.
that no. I'm not telling you. I'm not telling you what to do. I was giving someone was saying, "Hey, our tanks are getting slapped." There are other Lego pieces to put in, right? If your healers suck, you can wear an R, right? Like there are different options.
Okay.
Let me ask about the tank slapping. There's a lot of
Okay,
tank
that
slapping
makes
going on here in Ulduar. Now look, we're talking about Iron Council. I know that fucking Algalon, like we said, hits like the fucking boat driving the truck, driving the tank. But like
The Titanic,
yeah, the Titanic.
Yeah, facts,
so
facts.
Get it
They're
right,
all on
Josh.
steroids.
Let me
They're all on
ask-
steroids.
He put a lot of thought into that.
let me ask
Yeah, I
the
did. Thank you.
shittest question that I'm allowed one shit question per podcast. Let me ask the bad question that you can all laugh at me for. We just sit here sort of maligning RNG factors in raids and going like, Zyrene, obviously we were talking about like shithouse RNG mechanics just feels bad. Why are they in raids? Blah, blah, blah. Now, I know this is not that. It's not a one-to-one comparison, but like when you have bosses that really hit tanks like trucks, are there moments where your tank just got fucking slapped with the crit and it feels like you were a bit of a victim of bad RNG, or is it not the same thing?
Who are you
Well,
asking first?
you're
Zyrene,
uncritical,
Zyrene.
right? So
You're asking me.
Oh, you're uncritical, of course.
You play you play Prop Paladin because Ardent Defender lets you do that. It lets you get shit on once every 2 minutes, and you would have died.
Mm-hmm.
That's the thing about Iron Council, where I play that as Prop Warrior, as a Prop Paladin. I keep saying I don't know what's on my mind. But I play that as Prop Warrior, Prop Paladin, and Prop Paladin just feels infinitely better because you can fuck up one time. And here's the thing, right? You mentioned RNG. There are
do that often, bro?
There are two big RNG things in Iron Council that
yeah.
I actually have a problem with. The first one is the second person you kill, the medium mode, the medium-sized guy, the Rune Breaker, the Rune guy. He will cast Rune of Power underneath the Steel Breaker while he is casting Fusion Punch. And it will up his damage. That it will pop your Ardent Defender, or it will kill your Warrior, or your Druid, or your DK. It will kill them. It will absolutely fucking kill them. If there are the only two left, it will cast that on him while he is fucking raising his fist, because the cast of Rune of Power is shorter than the cast of Fusion Punch. And the Steel Breaker is fucking so big, he's sitting there fucking as wide as a fucking school bus. And you move him out of the fucking rune, it takes forever to do that. It takes a bit of time, and there might be a little bit of
I actually noticed that little lag. I actually noticed that it takes a really long time to move that boss. I thought
I actually have
being
a-
really stupid.
So you're saying
I
the
have a
nature
weak
damage
aura.
ability? You're saying the nature damage ability is one shotting you?
I'm saying the nature damage ability is procking my Ardent Defender. Is actually
It sounds like, my friend, that you could use this wonderful
Some
thing. I
nature
think we
resist-
call it nature
nature
resistance, my friend, to cut down on that RNG.
So how that works is
you actually, you know what? I will seed this north. Maybe wearing nature resistance gear and having a nature res totem during the fight, or my hunter running a nature res aura may help me a little bit. That may actually be the route that I have not thought about or experimented enough with, and I will seed that to you. I totally agree with that.
I love it. Zyrene, let me keep you going. Just inject. The reason I bring this up is I've no doubt you have noticed the massive conversation going on in the retail space this week regarding tanks. And there was a nerf that was thrown out. And
Tanks are fucking OP.
Yeah, everybody's talking
Tanks in
about the retail tank. That's right. So what I'm getting at is just real quick, what I'm getting at is it's created this whole discussion amongst MMO gamers about what the tank really, does in a dungeon and how much damage they should be taking, blah, 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 blah. So we're talking about super, super spiky damage in a hard raid like Ulduar and the pressure that it puts on the healer and the tank and everything. And that's what classic gamers are kind of used to. And there's a different argument going on in the retail space where they're like, they were gods, and people are now discussing, well, should a tank actually be borderline invulnerable, or is it good, or is it bad? Tell us your thoughts.
Tanks should be tanking fucking damage. You shouldn't be doing the same damage or more than any other class in AoE or
Your
be
DPS,
second in
yeah.
fucking damage. You shouldn't be
Yeah.
healing more than a fucking healer. You should be taking damage. I play a healer in retail, and the tank out heals me. The tank out heals me on 7 out of 8 fights. I'm sitting there going, what is my job? He's using a shield to negate most of the damage he's going to take. What is my job? I heal everyone but the healer. Everyone but the tank in retail. I heal everyone. I'm a raid healer in retail. The tank takes care of him himself. When it comes to tanking, you shouldn't deal more damage in AoE than a normal damage dealer. You should not heal more than the healer in your group. In M+, you should do less healing and less damage than the healer and the DPS. You should be taking damage and taking pride in the fact that you're taking damage. Maybe I understand to some degree that taking damage is not a rewarding experience. I get that. To some degree, people go, oh, I shouldn't be taking damage and feeling good about it. I feel fucking good about it. I love tanking. When somebody else doesn't take a fucking giant hit and I do, and I know how to tank bust that fucking hit, that feels good to me. That feels good to me. But that is a 5%, 10% experience. And you know how many tanks you need in a fucking group? 20% of the group needs to be a tank in regular retail raids. A regular retail experience in your regular dungeon. That's the problem that they're experiencing. So they keep buffing tanks. They keep making them heal more so that they can actually appeal to the regular player who's like, oh, I should play tank in this.
I'm gonna give you the advice that I give all my raiders, and it's don't play retail.
Oh, Lord Naj. North, let me throw it over to you. North, listen up.
Big agree.
Let me say this. Agrand's in chat saying, good thing for you, Zyrene. In Wrath of the Lich King Classic, Steelbreaker will hit you hard. We did that just for you, big guy. But North, I'm going to direct this question at you because Agrand was in some, Twitch chats, I believe, I wouldn't call it harassing the players, but poking the players about Steelbreaker fucking just destroying them. What's the deal?
I actually sat in on our Steelbreaker attempts.
Oh, there you go. What's the deal with Steelbreaker?
Yeah.
What is the fucking problem here?
So here, there's a couple things. So Irene touched on it. There are a couple things. I don't think Steelbreaker is the bad part of this. I actually think the bad part of this is the right before Steelbreaker. That's the RNG that can be frustrating, but I think is actually ultimately kind of rewarding. And people will hate me for this, right? Like I don't mind the fusion punch thing where it can just go down in the middle because ultimately there kind of is a solution to it. It is running the paladin or it is wiping it up and looking for, they kind of just womboed their abilities well, right? Sometimes they all offer you the same thing. They're gonna put down the rune twice in a row. All of your warlocks, they get 100% damage increased corruptions on Steelbreaker. He's gonna melt like a motherfucker, and that feels great. And so you have this push and pull where the fight does feel different from attempt to attempt, primarily for two reasons. One, it's where the rune of power goes, and it's when the rune of power goes down. It's also two, when the rune of death goes down. So the way that these two abilities sort of interlock, you are spreading to bait this mechanic that is a massive AoE on the ground while Mulgheim is alive while you're in the second phase of the fight. But also to kill Steelbreaker because the DPS requirement is so tough. When he kills a tank, and he will kill a tank because he puts a debuff on to kill the tank. You just will die after a certain amount of time. He will gain, I believe it's 30% health. You put wound poison on him or MS.
It's 20 to 40. I heard it's bugged. I don't know.
It seems weird. It does seem weird. So he heals for a certain amount and then he does more damage. He also has a pulsing aura. So the difficulty here is he will kill the tank, right? And then he does increase damage and you have to beat this huge DPS check. The only real way to do it in this gear is to make sure that the rune of power goes down and then you immediately kill Mulgheim, right? The second boss in the second phase. And so he can drop because of these cooldowns. It's not fixed. It's not every 30 seconds a rune goes down. He can hold his rune and he can hold his rune of death. And the raid wants to stack right before killing Mulgheim. And so you have to hold, and that can be really hard. But you want to push him the second that rune starts to be casted. But you can push him right the second that the runes can be casted, and if you wait another minute in the rotation, you're all going to die because the healers might be So you have to push him there, and the rune of death might be off cooldown. He can then, if you don't push him instantly, turn around, snap, your entire raid is stacked on the rune, haha, rune of death, you're all dead, right? And that can be really frustrating, but But the real mechanic that actually sucks, because you can just get around that, you can just do more pulls, is the fact that Steelbreaker is really hard to move out of his own rune, right?
Yes,
You put that rune down at the end, and the tank positioning is very difficult, very cool, very difficult. And because his model is huge, it's really hard to let the melee hit him from the rune.
You're literally stopping me from blowing up a Boone in Booth in the house in the chat.
Do it.
Because
Booth's been on the show. He knows the drill.
He says Mulligan drops one of
is.
the runes of power on either himself or the other boss. Yes, it's a 50-50 chance.
And you have to do it right before, and you can't just redo it that moment. You have to do it right then. You have to go with what you get, and you could get fucked, and the tank has to try and reposition it, and everyone's trying to do the most damage possible, and the melee are getting fucked, and everything's going fucking crazy.
The problem is the tank always gets fucked on that because you're stacking them. Because the way that Steelbreaker works is he's doing the mechanic where he targets one of the people who are out of his range of melee range to do a debuff on them, makes them take more magic damage. So people are usually doing 3 people outside of the melee range so that it will rotate the duration of the debuff around them, right? So one person gets it, second person gets it, third person gets it, goes back to the first person, etc. It's fucking hard. Moving Steelbreaker, even when I see the Rune Breaker target him and go, woo, that guy's getting Rune of Power right there, I'm moving Steelbreaker. He is the thickest of the thick. When I move him, it is hard. Even if I move him immediately.
You have to move him while the healers have to know, right? The healers have to know, the melee need to know, because if they get too far out of range, he'll smack the melee, everyone's dead.
Yeah. So people don't know this, but Fusion Punch, the way the ability, I have no insight into actually how this ability works, but this is my own analysis of the ability. Fusion Punch target acquisition. Fusion Punch's target. I know, right?
No, I'm in the same space. It's all good.
Fusion Punch's target acquisition is only 5 yards. It cannot target anybody within 10 yards of it. So when I'm moving Steelbreaker out of the lethal ability of having Fusion Punch plus having the Rune of Power on the ground, I'm moving him. He puts his fist up, I'm 6 yards out because I have to move him. Otherwise, 5 yards, he's hitting me, right? 6 yards out, he's
not moving until you get out of that range.
He's targeting somebody else. The target acquisition and the target completion for Fusion Punch is different. Target acquisition seems 5 yards. Target completion seems infinite. So let's say I target Josh, right, with Fusion Punch. Josh runs 100 yards away. I'll keep hitting Zyrene. Even if Fusion Punch is a minute-long cast, let's say it's a minute long, I hit him for fucking 59 seconds. And then I go, you know what? The cast completed. Josh?
Destiny arrives.
Woo! Like, it fucking hits him. That's how that ability works. The target acquisition is different than the target completion of Fusion Punch. Fusion Punch can only target people within melee range. If I'm moving the boss and you get acquired, I can't do shit about it. It will hit you when the cast completes. It will hit you. 3 seconds later, Josh is dead. Even if he's 100 yards away, even if I move the boss to Africa, doesn't matter. It's done. That's the part of Steel Council I have a problem with, is the target acquisition, the target completion of Fusion Punch. That's what I have a problem with.
I'll have to. We'll have to move on, guys. Booth has been on. Booth, no, it's all good. I loved every second of it. Don't apologize. Booth has been on the show before. He's still like pushing back in Twitch chat. I love to see it. I love the back and forth there, but I do have to move on because we've only got 20 more minutes left of Zyrene's time. So, guys, let's move on to Firefighter. Mike, let me throw it over to you, and then we'll hear from Lord Naj. Mate, Mike, I'll throw your ranking on the boys soon, but you put Mimiron as your number 3 most difficult hard mode in the instance. Talk to us about what you think, just why you put that one third, maybe.
Wait. Can I ask the question of which 2 are higher? That's a question to you, Josh.
So sorry, he put Yogg Zero and Algalon higher.
Yogg Zero and Algalon?
Is that right? That's right, Mike, right? Yesterday we went through this. He said,
Yeah. From what I saw in the PTR, yeah. So,
You're
sorry.
right.
So,
Right.
what was the question?
The question was just like, you put Mimiron number 3 in the hard mode difficulty rankings. Tell us why you've got it there, and why you're excited about this one for the 2022 crowd.
Mainly for he's mechanically like one of the hardest fights, at least in the final phase, because he's doing all the mechanics that he does in the first 3 phases of the fight combined. Plus, on hard mode, you have to deal with all the fires just spreading out throughout the room, and it's probably, I would argue, it's the most chaotic fight in the raid, in my opinion, at least from when all the different times I've done firefighter. And it puts people to the test of the personal responsibility of just avoiding all these mechanics all at once, and having the DPS race of having to kill all 3 parts of him at the same time.
All right, let me jump in. Lord Narj, then Zyrene. Lord Narj, true or false? Most chaotic fight in Ulduar.
Yeah. It gets pretty crazy at the end, man. I mean,
Yeah.
it gets pretty freaking nuts at the end, like really fucking nuts at the end. So I'm trying to think about. I didn't get to
That's
do
what
it.
I was talking about.
I did it back in the
4.
day. Yeah. I didn't get to do it in PTR. I did it, very familiar with the fight back in the day. But like, I've obviously seen the videos and PTR, and it looks like it's very similar to what I remember. And I mean, remember, it's all his usual abilities, or almost all his usual abilities, right? The lasers, the shock blast, the machine gun, whatever, and the fire on the ground. And this isn't fire on the ground like some other fights that we're used to, where it's like a void zone or 2 or 3 or whatever, or a firewall. This is like, I don't know, would you say like 40% of the floor ended up being covered by a maze of fire? Not like a wall of fire. It's like a maze of fire. So you don't just like, okay, it's here, so let me go left, or it's here, or let's everyone go right. It's like, let's all fucking run in a huge batshit circle to like get the fuck out of this maze. So yeah. To answer your question, yeah, it's probably the most chaotic fight. But I'm excited as hell. I'm personally excited as hell for it, because like Mike said, it's a big personal accountability fight. It's not something that you can kind of precondition everyone to, when X happens, you got to do Y, right? Like, oh, if it's on the left, go to the right. Like, no, like everyone has to have their head out of their ass and make sure that they are taking the personal responsibility of looking at their feet and walking the right way, all while dodging this and doing the DPS they need to do to finish the fight.
Zyrene, let me throw it over to you and inject the following. Booth is saying something that I heard earlier today again on Sarth and Crix's podcast from Geordie. We all love Geordie, who mentioned the following. Well, I'll read Booth's quote and then I'll get to what Geordie said. Booth basically said that, Firefighter is rough, sure, but its difficulty is significantly lowered by the 3.3 balance and 13 years of min-maxing. As soon as you get the fire movement down, the min-max DPS meta drops the fire maze mechanic on the back burner. And to load onto that, Geordie also said earlier today that, yeah, it's tough, but like kind of like, I know this applies to all encounters, but once you know, like dodging the fire becomes a thing you just do, and it's kind of okay in the long run. So Zyrene, if I say to you again, push that question that Mike has put forward, most chaotic fight in Ulduar, yes or no? Do you agree or disagree?
No, it is not. It is not the most chaotic fight in Ulduar. Yogg Zero Phase 3 is the most chaotic fight. Right now, excluding XT and healer responsibility, Yogg Zero Phase 3, the second round of ads, is the most chaotic part. People are literally trying to skip that part right now. When it comes to your Phase 2 of Mimiron, Phase 4 is a joke. Phase 2 is the hardest part of Mimiron. You can beat Mimiron bringing 6 healers, 7 healers, to put an exaggeration on it. Mimiron is not hard. Phase 2 is hard. Making it through the fight with everyone alive is hard. Right?
Chaotic or hard are two different things.
Yeah, that's fair. Chaotic versus
what
hard.
I'm saying?
But part of the problem.
Wait. That was Nog, right?
No, that was
that was Lord Narj.
Sorry, Nosh. Do you know how fires work?
Yeah, no, I get it, but it's still chaotic because you have to be responsible for 25 people.
How does fire work?
Yeah, I step out of the fire. I understand.
No, but that's the thing. You don't actually know how to control it, right? That's the meme.
Josh, shut the fuck up. How does fire
Oh,
work?
I see. What you're saying. Yeah, but like you have to be responsible for 25 people though. You
No,
know
no,
what
no.
I'm saying? Like
How,
at least maybe
how
in
does
my
fire
guild.
work?
What in terms of
How
following?
does
What, the
fire work?
chase?
How?
I'm raising my hand, Mr. Zyrene. Can I answer,
Yeah,
please?
North, answer it. Answer the
Go
question,
ahead.
North.
No.
Well, clearly he doesn't know. He hasn't attempted it yet. He doesn't know how it
Jump
works.
in,
And so
North,
we
jump
can
in,
explain it
jump
for him
in.
without being cunts to him, right? Like the fire can be controlled and isn't controlled in some situations because the fire chases the closest target.
Right.
Obviously,
It is
throughout the fight, there are
called-
the mechanics that remove it, right? But you have to fight the fire. That's why it's firefighter. That's what Zyrene's about to say.
The achievement is called firefighter because you make a tank make the fire target him. I tank firefighter. I tank Mimiron. The entire time my DK jerks off in Death Knight Bloodland. And he sits there and he tanks the fire.
You just
The
drag it
fire-
around.
The fire will target the nearest person. If there are two fires, one here,
I thought it
and
was a
every-
random. I thought it was a random person.
It's not random.
the
It's not
nearest
random.
person, so you can just literally drag it. Okay.
Yeah.
I thought it was a
if
random
there's
person.
a fire
I was like,
here and a
that's-
fire here,
okay.
and everyone else is on the bottom side of him, and there's a DK here, both fires will go, oh, I'm ticking. Boom. They move here. They move towards the closest person. That's how firefighter works.
And also throughout the fight, right? So things will, right? Like it will heal every 30 seconds. He'll do
No,
new fire, and that fire is
changes
random.
everything. For some reason, I
That
thought
fire
it
is
was-
random, but then you can direct it. Yeah.
That's all good.
So
So,
here's
to be fair
actually-
as well,
here's actually what
to
we
be fair
do.
as well, it's
So-
2 o'clock in the morning for Naj.
I know. I apologize. Sorry, I don't mean to roast you
I'm
or
not
anything
offended,
like that.
homie. I'm not offended.
I apologize. I know I can be really abrasive, but I just want to make this clear. And so everybody else who may not have the experience or may be struggling with firefighter, one thing you can do is between phases, right? One of the things I do as a tank, I tank the Leviathan towards where he's going to go. He always goes towards the top slot. He will always go towards the top left, right? It makes less time for the RP to happen. RP happens. You have this giant room. Everybody's fucking like circled around. Make them all group. Sit them all in one spot. Fires will go out while he's fucking doing his RP. You will help me test my shit. Oh, now I'm gonna get into this next part of the phase. Oh my god. And boom, fire comes down. They're all in the same spot. Fires can only target players, and they will target the nearest player to spread to. So what happens is you group everybody into one spot. Fires come down, boom, boom, boom. You move. They will target you, they'll move. They'll target you, they'll move. They'll target you, you move. Then he'll go, oh, I'm going to start the next phase. Here's the part. Oh my God. Fire comes out, boom, hits the ground, and you're good to go. You have your DK sit there, and your Paladin just takes it. Your Paladin tanks the actual boss. That's how it goes.
Naj, I must admit, I love your guildies in chat saying, don't apologize, Zyrene, get him.
Yeah.
No, let me tell you, my guild is so much respect, bro.
I actually have to apologize because as somebody who plays, I play all 3 tanks except for Feral Druid right now, and I hope to remedy that.
Is Feral Druid even a tank right now?
If you have 60k HP on Algalon, they are a tank. Like, they're very good, apparently. If you
Based?
fucking funnel them gear. Yeah, apparently. Like, you know how people are like, every fucking like top 10 guild is using a Feral Druid on fucking patchwork to soak the hatefuls. And I sit there and I'm like, DK will work. DK works, but it's not as good. So I apologize for that. I know, like, here's the thing, right? Is you got to take the wins with the losses. A lot of people just go, oh, look at me. I said fucking Prod Warrior will be the best. Oh, look at me. I got to take the losses with the wins, right? When it comes to Ulduar, I sit there and I go, damn, Blood DK is way better than I thought it would be. I thought Blood DK would be better in TOGC, but it's actually gonna spike in Ulduar a lot. Like if you are a guild who is struggling, Blood DK is really good in Ulduar. I actually didn't think it would be that good. It's incredibly good. It's super fucking good. I thought that Prop Warrior, Prop Paladin, Feral Druid, etc. And you'd be like looking at your fucking Blood DKs in TOGC. They're gonna play Frost or Unholy, whatever, for Ulduar. They're actually incredibly good in Ulduar. I actually have to apologize. I play one and I didn't think it would be that good. It's super fucking good in Ulduar.
Let me jump in north, then Nogs. Let's jump on over to, well, I'm going to skip Thorm. I mean, I'm told, this hard mode is probably the easiest one. I don't want to waste time talking about it. Is that kind of a consensus?
Wait. Can I just jump in?
Yeah.
It is easy if you don't melee stack. If you're somebody who is like, oh, I love DKs, they do so much damage in Nax, you got to bump them.
It's the same thing with Hodir. Like Hodir and Thorim are like, hey, if you're not running a melee stack, these are kind of fucking easy.
Yeah, we lost a fusion in the race on PTR because we were stacking DKs and not warlocks. Like, we had 14 melee. It was embarrassing, dude. Like, the chain lightning from Thorim, it behaves like Cthulhu chain lightning from his eye. It sucks, dude. It sucks to eat that hit. Like, you insta die after 3 bounces. It is bad.
I want to start
You can do it, but it's tight.
I want to start that class stacking conversation north, and then we'll throw over to Nogs after you, and then open it to the floor. Hodir is one of those bosses that might call for obviously a bit of class stacking. Again, putting aside the top guilds, let's talk about your average dad gamer guild. They've smashed fucking face through Nax. They're loving life. Now here we are going through Ulduar, trying the hard modes. Now we meet Hodir. This is a very tight DPS check. We've talked about what the implications might be for red paladins and whatnot. Talk to me about this encounter in 2022 with this hard mode we're getting, and how you feel about class stacking and whether they're going to have to do it, like it or not, to get by.
So here's the thing: it's not a tight DPS check when you class stack. Realistically, it's not that bad. But it's only when you class stack. So the issue with this encounter is we talked about this, I think earlier, but I'll repeat it. There are a couple mechanics to go out. One, there's a haste beam that goes down, right? That haste beam benefits casters the most because you're not sure where it's going to be, and Hodir has to move a lot, and so you can sit there in that thing and just pummel the boss. Also, casters like to be stacked on that because the haste, the crit buff that goes out, generally benefits casters more. Shadow Priest is crazy with crit. Fire Mage, crazy with crit. Affliction Warlock, less so, right? But Demo Lock, crazy with crit. And so if you get these, it increases your critical damage by 135%, I believe. And then you have the Singe buff on the boss, applied from the fires, people getting the fire buff and applying it to the boss, so he takes more magic damage. What this means is, and the way that the crit buff works, is that a player gets buffed with a Storm Cloud. That Storm Cloud then has to run through all the other players. And the melee, because of how little damage they do, if they get targeted with that, they're going to want to run through the casters. So you want even more casters because, it's going to target the casters. The casters are going to be near the other casters, and so the casters are going to run through each other. It's faster to apply the buff. You're getting more uptime of this damage. So it's less like, you have to make sure your DPS is perfect. No, it's, are you maximizing the mechanics of the encounter? Another clever thing with this, right, is because every time you flash freeze the boss, it freezes all of the things that apply those buffs. Those buffs are applied from the people that you free from flash freezes before the encounter, as the encounter begins. And so if you can make sure that it's easy to kill them by dragging Hodir on top of them so you can Seed of Corruption, by having a lot of Boomkins for Starfall, having a lot of Rogues actually for AoE, a lot of their damage is magic damage as well if they're Assassination. So these things all kind of stack up together and make it easier to throw it up. And tank movement comes in that as well. If you can range them and kind of clump them together, right, they'll get flash frozen in the same place. So it is less a DPS check and more a uptime check and a mechanics check, I'd say. It's uptime and mechanics on that, and also tank positioning. Once you get those down, it's really not that difficult, but it immensely favors casters because of how all those mechanics work and how much movement the boss is undergoing, and how generally they want to pretty much optimize casters for every situation because of the 50% damage buff.
Very good. Nogs, let me throw it to you quickly, mate. Anything with Hodir that you noticed in your playing on the PTR or watching? Anything that you think might be a problem for the dad guilds, or what are your thoughts on the class stacking as well?
Yeah, there's a lot of visual overloads for sure. Even just the snowdrifts, they weren't really showing up properly for half the team that I went in on the PTR with. So just little things like that, I'm sure it's going to get tuned. But for all the mechanics, especially the fires that they were alluding to on Firefighter, please turn your graphics down and you will be able to see the edges better. Same as in BT on Illidan. So,
well, they also got the feedback. Naj, I'll throw it over to you. They got the feedback from that brilliant post. Sorry, what's that, mate?
I was gonna depart.
Oh no,
My
no!
girlfriend
If you
just
got to
told
go,
me
mate,
2
you go.
a.m.
It is very late.
I'm
No, no, no. I
It's very
thank you
late.
so
But
much
I
for
will
being here,
say,
mate.
one thing just based on the topic that we were just talking about is that when you talk about the dad guilds and even kind of the more average guilds, I think the attitude is very different in the sense of the composition isn't super existent. And I don't want to say the composition is totally out of whack, right? Like they're definitely not they're definitely not losing a ton of buffs. But I would say they're probably going on that WoW calculator, looking to make sure that they cover their buffs, and then having the attitude of play what you want to play, right? So like at least that's my experience in the guilds that
It's
are
going to
around
be
my level of
challenging for
stuff.
them. Yeah.
So it's going to be challenging for them because they're going to have that kind of like, I hear Zyrene saying, no, we got 20 DKs and like we're going to have to sit half of them to get this thing. And like, a lot of the dad guilds kind of don't have that problem, nor do they care about it because they're not going to be benching people, you know, because their class isn't right or because they stack the wrong way, because they probably have like a balanced raid, and they just have players playing what they want to play. And if they can't, if they can't kill this boss in the first couple of weeks, they'll just spend more weeks on it, because I just don't think they're at that level of hardcore. But I do want to say good night. I'm
Yeah,
heading out
mate. Thank you so
before another
much.
tangent comes up.
No, no, no.
Thank you
Go for
guys.
it. Go
Thank
for
you
it.
guys.
Shout out
Awesome
whoever you want to shout
conversation.
out.
Definitely learned a lot. Awesome conversation. Just shout out the big hearts as usual. Everyone, please ignore Swamp Fox completely.
Yeah,
Completely. Please, dude. If I tell you that this is all he does in raid, this guy parses straight 99s. All he does is say weird shit in raid chat. But I love him to death.
It's always the best fucking players, right?
Dude, can I tell you, this guy literally just writes the fucking weirdest shit in raid
It's
chat all day.
always the best players. Oh my
And I didn't
God.
get to say during the introduction when we were talking about North, big fan. Like, used your guide, huge fan. So definitely fangirled out a little bit in the beginning of the chat. So great to be here with you. And Josh,
Hey,
thanks again for putting it all together, man.
No, no, no. Thank you, mate. Go get some sleep. All right, Zyrene, I'll throw this question over to you. What I was going to say was, talking about like graphical shit with Hodir, obviously we got that great feedback post from Gary Oak on the official forums that Blizzard actually replied to, as he gave a whole bunch of really good dot point feedbacks on like, hey, you think you've done pre-nerf, but you actually haven't. And he corrected a lot of things. But one of the more generic observations that I'm sure a lot of people are already aware of, didn't necessarily take this post to point it out, was, Algalon as well. Like the visuals of the fucking floor, the brightness was out of control. How was that when you went in there and had a bit of fun with that graphically?
So, as a tank, I usually look at like 50-degree angle from the floor. I want to see everything in front of me. I want to see everything that's happening across the realm. As a DPS, most people zoom in and look down or up, right? So I understand that. As a DPS player, it probably hurts you a lot more. As a tank player, it didn't really phase me too much. Just to answer your question. It didn't phase me too much as a tank player. He's slapping my ass. He's fucking making me he'd make me call him daddy, all right? Algalon's making me call him daddy. Everybody else, they're like, oh, I can't see the floor. I'm like, he's owning me right now. Like, do you even need to see the floor? He's fucking clapping my cheeks, dude. So yeah, that's how I felt about Algalon.
All right, too easy. Guys, we are hitting the home stretch. Don't worry if you are getting tired. We don't have much longer to go. Look, let's just talk about the two big ones. Let's talk about Algalon. Let's talk about Yogg-Saron. Let's start with Yogg-Saron. Mike, I'll get you to kick us off. Look, you did Zero Light Yogg back in the day. I'm sure, like, I don't know what percentage of the player base did it back in the day. I'm sure it wasn't, like, overly high. You were a kid. You did it.
Very low.
How do you feel about 2022 and Zero Lights and the player base's likely obsession with getting this thing in the small percentage of guilds that are probably going to fucking do it?
I think it's gonna be the biggest brick wall for everyone that attempts it. It's easily the hardest fight, bar none. In my opinion, still before Mythic reigning and all that, it was one of the hardest encounters Blizzard ever made in World of Warcraft. And I want to be clear, phase 3 is part of what is the hardest part of Yogg-Zero. Having to deal with those ads and dealing with Yogg at the same time, having to do that balance of how much damage you're going to do those ads and how much damage you can do to Yogg-Zero is the main thing that 99% of guilds are going to be stuck on. That phase 3 is the hardest part of the fight, bar none. And it's going to be. I'd be surprised if single percentage of guilds are killing it, even in Ulduar gear.
All right, Zyrene, how is this version of Yogg though? How have you liked it?
It's a lot of fun. Like, I think that back in the day, Cthulhu was one of my favorite fights of all time, right? Nax was my favorite instance, but Cthulhu was one of my favorite fights. Just having the stomach and the place where people have to go in, just like the Yogg, right? And I think that when it comes to Yogg, I sit there and I go, this fight is going to get so much easier over time. And I really like that you mentioned that, Mike, that this fight is something that you really like. And I sit there and I go, this fight is really fun for me at the time, but I know it's going to get easier over time, right? It's going to get easier when I have more gear, etc. Like, I sit here and I go, I want to ask you, Mike, you know about the evade strat, right?
I don't think my guild ever did it back then. I know isn't that how Stars originally did it back in the day? They had like a crazy hunter kite like evade strat.
So basically, right now, as a prop paladin on that fight, the first beacon comes out, boom. Ret paladin, or I guess we'll say it's who's bringing a ret paladin? Feral druid, a hunter comes out, and then somebody else brings those out, right? The three ads get the first beacon. The second beacon is supposed to be 5 targets. I can rock boot out, and the evade strat is if you push yourself against the wall. If I'm a paladin tanking all of the ads, I push myself against the wall. You rocket boot, you go like 10, 15, 20, 25 yards away. When you put yourself against the wall, the ads go like.
Well, isn't that kind of like the exploit that the first guild that killed Yogg Zero when they had someone sit in the brain room and the ads just stood there and did nothing? Isn't that kind of similar to that?
It's sort of similar, except the ads, they won't teleport to the person or anything like that in the classic version of the game. The way they do it is they'll run at them and they'll be like, oh, I got to move into the wall. Oh. So there's a way to actually make your paladin who's tanking everything last a really long time. And this is the modern day of the games. People don't mind exploiting. They don't mind fucking doing things like that, right? So there's a lot of odds out there. I think I could find one for you in like a few fucking seconds here. But yeah, there's a lot of ways to actually make it very easy to do something like that. And I don't know if that should be fixed or if it should be balanced around, right? That's kind of the issue. It
should absolutely be fixed. It should be fixed because phase 3 is the hardest part of Yogg Zero.
Wait. So I want to add a curveball here because this is more of like a personal expertise of me. You know why phase 3 is really hard is because phase 2 is a fucking joke because the way that the tentacles work, the crusher tentacles, right?
Yeah.
The ones that do a lot of damage. They remove their stacks on melee hit, right?
I don't exactly remember.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry. I don't mean to fucking lampoon you or anything like that right now.
I don't remember all the intricate mechanics of Yogg Zero.
So the way that crusher tentacles, the big fucking tentacle in the room, that thing gives everyone a 20% damage debuff, but the damage debuff does not remove unless you hit it with a melee attack. But it constantly gains stacks until it's at 99 stacks of being dealt damage to deal more damage and hit faster. So if somebody's hitting it over and over again, it's at 99 stacks, I walk in to remove its debuff of making everybody
and you get one-shotted.
I get one shot.
Okay,
right?
That makes it. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
There's a fucking talent in Prop Paladin called a Judgment of the Just. This talent, the thing that makes people deal 20% less attack speed, it is near the bottom of the Prop Paladin talent tree. Mm-hmm. This thing fucking counts as a melee hit. This talent is bullshit. This talent, everybody asks me, they're like, why do you expect a Judgment of the Just? I'm like, it counts as a melee hit. Judgment of the Just makes Seal of Command go off twice. It makes Seal of Command go off once when it should go off 0 times. It makes Seal of Vengeance go off once when you have 5 stacks when it should normally go off 0 times. Judgment of the Just, the 20% attack speed slow on the 46th talent in Prop Paladin tree, it makes your fucking talent, it makes your, Judgment count as a melee hit.
Mhm.
It makes Yogg 0 a joke. It makes it a joke. When I play Prop Warrior, I sit there and I heroic throw on a large cooldown, and it will interrupt it. Hammer of Wrath, Judgment with Judgment of the Just all count as melee attacks. This makes Prop Paladin so much better on Yogg 0.
Okay. Now I get what you're saying. Okay,
Yeah.
that makes more sense.
On Yogg
yeah,
0,
yeah.
this thing that can fucking thrash about and fucking kill everybody, even me as a tank walking into
Yeah.
melee range, it lays me out. I can just judge it, and it removes the
And then, yeah,
debuff
it
from
doesn't-
everybody.
Yep, that makes
It's
sense.
so
Okay.
Judgment of the Just needs to be fixed, in my opinion.
North, let me throw it over to you.
Oh,
and,
this is so Yogg 0 is just a soapbox to fix paladins for Zareen.
yeah,
I
here we
see.
go. Exactly.
Yeah. So, like, I think there's a difference. All right, personally, this is my personal differentiation. There is a difference between a bug and a thing that didn't happen to get fixed in Wrath. In my opinion, when I say like Blade Barrier for blood decays, right? The 5% reduced damage. This thing refreshes. The talent says when your blood runes are on cooldown, you gain 5% damage reduction. If your blood runes are on cooldown and your blood rune is about to fucking tick over to be ready, and you press Horn of Winter, it refreshes the whole duration. I'm sitting there going, that is not explained in the talent at all. This is a bug. Right? People go, oh, this is a bug. In my opinion, it's really something that never got fixed. Right? It's not a bug that makes you go, oh, this is so OP or like broken and shit like that. It's something that never got fixed.
Fair enough.
Blade Barrier is not a bug. It is a bug under my definition, but it's something that never got fixed, right? A bug is something people go like, oh, it's so OP, it's so broken or whatever. I'm like, oh, it existed in Wrath, but never got fixed. I think it should be fixed.
Yeah, and Booth is saying, like, you know, that's authentic to Wrath, though. But I do agree that the team has already come out and said they're willing to fix the things that probably should have been fixed back in the day.
Well,
Yeah.
but if you're opening that up, right, you know, then Rain would be a little upsetty spaghetti when they realize that the gargoyle should not have infinite haste scaling.
Well, no,
It should
but
not
I
be
mean,
able to
they're
reduce
sure.
the
Are you talking about that
level.
gargoyle thing they found the other day? They're surely going to fix that.
Oh, yeah. That'll be fixed. That'll be fixed.
But on private servers, for instance, Unholy Death Knights were not nearly as powerful because there was a limit on the cast speed because the actual gargoyle had a GCD limit. And maybe authentically it was not that way. Maybe they discover eventually, oh, actually there was some weird code and then the chicken fix was making it so that the gargoyles can attack too fast, right? Like, who knows? But like, that's a bullshit mechanic. Unholy Death Knight should not have an infinite haste scaling, like turbo snapshot, right? Like, and even if you remove that, there's still a really good class, but that should not exist the way it is. It is a thing that was never discovered. It's the same exact thing as this Judgment of the Just thing, right? It should not exist in that capacity. It's ridiculous.
North, can you provide me a clip from original Wrath and the Lich King that shows a gargoyle does not scale that high?
No, I'm not. I'm mirroring the thing that you said because I agree with it. Just because it's authentic does not mean that it's healthy or good in any way.
Oh, I agree.
The way that Unholy Death Knight works is stupid as fuck. And to be honest, right, like it should be changed. And it's really hard. It's really hard. Well, you know, where do you draw that line, right? Like, and the classic team has to ask this question. It's a really hard question to ask. Yeah. No one used Unholy Death Knight in that way. No one did that. No one, not a single fucking person did that. Maybe one guy, right? Maybe 3 guys, maybe 10 guys, right? But that was not known in the way that it's known now. And so people weren't playing it in that way. That iteration of it, the spec only lasted for 1 patch anyway. It was the end patch. So people didn't understand it. People didn't discover it. It wasn't as reiterated and rediscovered as it is now. And so, yes, it might be authentic to that patch, But is authenticity, and the classic team asks all the time, is that more important than a healthy experience? And oftentimes they answer no.
All right.
That's why they made phase 2 shorter. That's
That
why
makes
they
that
added
team really
things
good,
early.
though.
Yeah, for sure it does.
Go, Mike.
Can I-
Go, Mike.
I'd say this is the biggest tangent ever, and I think we've lost the fact that we're talking about a boss.
No, it's all good. Yeah, I'll bring it back. I'll bring it
It's
back.
relevant to Yogg though. Yogg is made easier by weird mechanics that probably shouldn't work that way. It shouldn't just be okay. Well, you have to ring Pot Paladin because this is the way they interact with the Crusher Tentacle, because that's a fundamental mechanic where people have to like send the tank in early and constantly reset the stacks. It's this dance, and the dance is completely circumvented. And to be honest, that's bullshit.
No, I
is bullshit.
hear what you're saying.
I agree.
Let me finish off on
As somebody who
Yogg.
plays Prod.
Let me finish off on Yogg with this one. We'll go relatively silly question, but we'll go closest to the pin, and then we'll move on to Algalon. What percentage of guilds are going to clear Yogg Zero Lights even with full Ulduar gear? We'll start
Zero light.
Zero Light. So, Mike, we'll get your guess closest to the pin. I mean, we can't answer this for months, obviously.
Sorry. Even with full Ulduar.
Yeah, well, so let's say you spent a couple of months in Ulduar and you're still going for Yogg Zero Light. What percentage of guilds are going to clear it?
I would say 10%.
All right, Zyrene?
16.74.
Very good. I love it. Nogs?
I was hoping Zyrene would keep that same energy he did before, that a bunch of guilds would be able to do one light. I think less. I honestly think 5%.
All right, North?
Zero light, you said?
Zero
Yeah,
Light.
He said by the end, right?
Yeah. So, like, still in the Ulduar phase.
By the end.
Let's say you got all the Ulduar gear.
Yeah. No,
Well, you can't get all the Ulduar gear without Yogg, right?
literally have better gear than it's ever been seen in the fucking game.
No, 100%. Yeah, I think Zyrene's right. I think killing it maybe regularly, not frequently, but I'd say like 15-20% of guilds. Yeah.
All right, fair enough. Guys, we'll zip it up with the last one, Algalon. Look, I don't know if you guys watch this at all. I sat there and watched Geordie stream for 2 days as these guys just bash their heads against Algalon, watching Fusion do their thing. It was pretty crazy to see. And also watching there was, noobs hit their head against the wall with a couple of bosses as well. And it raised this argument of I don't want to get back into the weeds of difficulty. I just want to talk about Algalon. But, if we're watching the best guilds in the world need a couple of days, 40, 48 hours worth of fucking pure practice on these bosses before downing them, that means everyone else is fucked. They haven't been on PTR practicing. Their practice now comes in game and they don't have that much fucking time to do it. Anyway, tell me your thoughts about Algalon and what you saw, whether you watched Fusion do it, whether you were doing it yourself. North, I'll start with you, mate. I mean, is this thing just it looked to me like a bit of a nightmare with how do you know, can you really see where the damage is coming from, blah, blah, blah.
So they've said they're going to fix the visual issues, which definitely are an issue. I think for me, I think the principal difficulty in the encounter, we pulled it, how many times we pull it? We pulled it one time, okay? After we'd finished Mimron Progress. We pulled it a single time. And half the people died because they were on the bridge and someone pulled it early and they didn't realize it was pulled. And I was shouting, "It pulled, get in." And then they all fell off the bridge. So I'd say this probably is the most difficult encounter because knowing where the bridge ends and begins, I think it's an extremely difficult mechanic for people to grasp when the lights are too bright, right? Like they're blinded by it and then they fall off the bridge and then the black hole swallows them. How right? You just can't win, right? It seems impossible. I think they should nerf it.
Cyrene, hit us.
I have to go, Josh.
Oh yeah, you Mike, you've got to go have beers with our friend Jay. Have a good time. Thank you so much, mate. I appreciate it.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
It was a pleasure talking to you guys. You guys are absolute killers with the intellectual discussion of all this stuff. Zyrene, it was a pleasure meeting you and talking to you.
Yeah, you too, dude.
Have a good night, everybody.
Thanks, mate. Have a good one. We'll talk to you later. Yeah, sorry, Zyrene, you're having a bit of a laugh. Tell us what you liked about what North said.
Where was I? You fucking wait! Your guys died to the bridge.
Yeah, so we had been we basically what happened is we were our guild was not like a super like PTR heavy guild, and we were like taking it easy in Nax, and it's like a lot of people from SOM, and so it's, like vanilla gamers, not used to like prog and stuff, so not a lot of people showed up to PTR, and we were like, okay, well, we haven't gotten the prog that we want because no one has really ever showed up, so we've had to pug people every week. So fuck it, we're gonna, instead of starting at 8 p.m., we're gonna start at 2 p.m. Okay, and we're gonna pug 20 people, and then we're going to slowly replace it with guildmates. So it took us a while to kill Mimron. It took us like 35, 37 attempts. Random Russian man was explaining the fight to us because we had never seen it at the beginning. The random Russian man was like, "You'll take fire here, you'll go there, it'd work." Like it was based. I loved it. But then after that, we didn't have a lot of time, and it was like, oh, do we want to pull more Iron Council stuff? Because like we had I think we were fine on it. It was like, oh, do we want to pull more Freya stuff? And it was like, well, we don't have the time to go to Yogg right now because this Laka doesn't have Yogg. So let's go see Algalon. And we stepped in, and someone stepped in and hit the boss, and they were like, he starts to scale. He's like, time immemorial has stand, like I have calculated all the cosmic odds, and you're a bitch boy, and I'm gonna fuck you in the mouth, like and I was like, pull starting, guys, pull starting. Like you have to, someone pulled it, and then it was like, no, that's just the RP. And I was like, I know better than you. That's not the RP. Like he is starting the fight, and everyone was scrambling around, and half the fucking people fell off the bridge. And they all fucking died. We were like, wow, Algalon hard.
Let me jump in, throw it to Nogs. He's got to go soon, mate. Hit us with your final thoughts on Algalon, Nogs.
Yeah, so unfortunately, I don't have that much on Algalon. Only pulled it once, and we gave up. But I just wanted to address a lot of the casual people here watching, the people that aren't in the top 1%, like Zyrene North and Lord Narch. They've been talking about their experiences at the top. So I just wanted to address majority of the player base and casuals real quickly. From my experience on the PTR,
Go for it, mate.
There will be a lot, and I mean a lot, of dad guilds that are going to crash and burn in the Secrets of Ulduar patch. And I've even prepared a letter while listening to Zyrene and North go on. It's a letter to the dad guilds.
Beautiful, hit us.
To my exhausted guild masters, to my overworked officers, and even you, the underappreciated foot soldier who spends more time thinking about your soft reserve next week than you did at your kid's parent and teacher interview. Please remember this when you step into the old god prison. Whilst this might just be a game for some of you, us pass monkeys that are scattered across your casual guilds, we beg you, the next time your raid leader links a gravity bomb weak aura, that you actually consider clicking it. Despite our belligerent elitism, we need you more than you think. Without your poorly snapshotted gargoyle, we wouldn't have the DPS required to get a decent kill time. And therefore, we won't be able to send mum down to the local printer to come back with our fresh pink 99s laminated on an A4 sheet of paper that would eventually hang up next to our favourite obscure anime poster. Sincerely yours, Pass Monkey 247.
Very well said, mate. Very well said. I love it. And look, it's important. So obviously, we do a lot of fucking, pretty, I want to say sort of elite talk sometimes on the show. It is obviously important to remember the casuals as well and talk about it from their perspective. So thank you for that, mate. Mate,
in all seriousness, it will be a huge step up for most guilds. Yeah. And I urge guild masters and officers to lay out realistic expectations for their goals. Yeah. And what we're seeing from PTR, your guild might not be able to clear the hard modes before a trial of the Crusader, or even possibly at all. I hope I'm wrong, but it could happen. So as long as you're communicating effectively with your raid members, when shit hits the fan, you guys might still be a guild come ICC.
Very good. Nogs, mate, shout out who you'd like to shout out, mate, and we'll let you go.
Just you, Josh, and the Classic Podcast. I appreciate it.
Thanks, mate.
Of course, North and Zyrene.
You're a legend, mate. We'll talk to you later.
You guys have a great night.
Take it easy.
All right, we'll let you guys go very, very soon. Let's just finish this one up. Look, I mean, fuck, guys. I've obviously gone on way fucking too late. Zyrene, I've gone a bit past your heart out, but I think your girlfriend said you had an extra half an hour, so that's the only reason I pushed it. Mate,
she's gracious. She's a gracious girlfriend.
Well, let's wind it up. Really, like, is there anything else that you guys really want to talk about regarding Algalon, or any final words you've got regarding Ulduar that you haven't had the chance to say yet?
I think Freya is a very interesting and cool fight, and I'm disappointed that we don't have the time to go over it. But there's a lot of cool strategies that went into that. People walked in thinking it would be a lot easier than it was, and they walked out realizing that it was actually easy. And it was a question of, putting the Legos where they needed to be, really understanding how you could manipulate mechanics, especially with knockbacks and roots and stuff, which I think was really refreshing and cool. And I think that Ulduar, I think that we're not going to see the same cookie cutter race because those guilds had to go in and practice those fights. They weren't practicing how to kill all of the trash super fast and where the invis skips are. They were practicing the bosses because this is a different caliber of raid, and I really look forward to watching it. I'll be participating in a minor way. We're trying to get fast on our server. My guild is not good enough to participate, like in the like top NA race quite yet. So I look forward to watching the VODs and seeing what all happens. But yeah, I think it should be really fun. I'm really looking forward to it, and I hope everyone else is, because it's a really cool instance. And even if you can't kill the hard modes week one, even if you can't kill a single hard mode week one, you'll be able to start killing hard modes, like even the dad guilds, right? Like you probably start with Hodir, right? Like, and you move on to like medium mode Iron Council, and you move on to Thorin, because it's not that bad. But try and look to, especially with this Joyous Journey thing, if you can get people to level up, flex classes, extra healers, things like Boomkins are really good. Holy Priest is pretty underrated. It's really cool on Iron Council, and it's super good on Memron. So that kind of stuff is really going to help you guys out. If you are worried about this, because it's weird and it's challenging, but it's optional challenging. It's really cool because it's like immersive and optional, and I think it has lived up to the hype. I think the classic team has done a fantastic job on this. I am absolutely beaming with how great this instance feels, because it feels exactly how I expected it would.
Very good.
So.
Zyrene, bring us home, mate. Thumbs up, thumbs down overall from what you've seen.
I honestly think it's a thumbs up. Like, I think Ulduar is really well tuned for the 1% that is very well geared coming into it. And then I think that at the same time, there are going to be people who struggle with it. I've heard it echoed here many times by the people on your podcast that they're going to struggle in week 7, week 6, week 8, right? I do think that it is really well tuned for the people. And I know people have asked me this question a lot of when do they think Algalon will be killed? I don't think it will be killed day 1. I think it'll be killed day 2, which is very different for Classic. Everybody's killed everything week 1, day 1, right? It's been like 37 minutes, 1 hour. Everything's been killed. I think it'll take 2 days to kill Algalon. I think people will get there, clear their entire raid, get Death's Demise, and be like, Algalon hits like a fucking truck. 10-man heroics. They'll do it and they'll come back the next day. I think it will take 2 days.
People might want to do 10-man heroics, which is cool. It's like a retail race.
I think it'll take 2 days to kill Algalon. I don't think it'll die in the first day, in the first 2 hours, etc. Like every other raid in Classic has ever been killed.
Fair enough. Well said. All right, guys, let's wind it up there. Let me start. North, obviously, mate, always a pleasure. Shout out whoever you'd like to shout out. You're streaming again, enjoying it?
Yeah, I am. I'm streaming a lot less. I'm streaming a lot more the past day, just because I'm leveling up a new mage. My old mage, I transferred it to my old horde mage. I transferred it to play with some friends, and yeah, I mean, the real life friends, they flake, I flake, who flakes? Anyway, so I'm leveling one right now. So yeah, I'm having fun. I'm chilling. I'm taking a little less seriously. But yeah, I stream my raids, stream my leveling.
Oh, good.
It's been fun.
North the Mage.
But yeah,
on
if
Twitch.
you wanna find where I am, it's on North the Mage on pretty much every social, Twitter, Twitch, Discord.
Very good. Very good, mate. We love you here. Zyrene, look, mate, I just want to say thank you so much. And again, I do profusely apologize for keeping you as late as I did. Like I said, the horrible thing is this is me almost rushing. You know what I mean? It's incredibly like long form content, but you've been brilliant, mate. I'm not fucking, pissing in your pocket. I've been on the edge of my seat with everything you've had to say today. You've been everything I thought you would be and more, and it's been an absolute privilege. And mate, shout out whatever you'd like to shout out. You stream as well. Tell people where to find you.
I do stream. It's on twitch.tv/Zyrene. You can follow me on Twitter at Twitter/Zyrene. But I do want to say 3 things. One is you don't have to apologize at all. I really appreciate that you invited me on, and I was able to give what I was able to give, and people will be able to say at the end of the day what that was, because I can't evaluate that myself, And 2, you don't have to apologize to me. Apologize to my girlfriend, Ren. She's amazing.
Yeah, you are amazing, and I am sorry for taking his time.
And 3, I can't talk about it too much now. I'll talk to you about it after the show. and you'll understand more about why I spoke the way I did. So,
Oh, all
it's a little
good, mate.
cryptic,
All good.
but you'll understand.
All good.
You'll understand.
No, we'll crack a drink together after this one. Look, guys, I'll end the stream there.
Thank fucking God.
Yeah. Thanks so much, guys. Look, guys, I'll end the stream there, and we'll talk to you on the next one. See you, stream.